On a bustling downtown street corner, Michael Thompson was just trying to get home to his 8-year-old daughter after another exhausting double shift at the warehouse. His calloused hands gripped the worn handle of his lunchbox knuckles, white with fatigue. The autumn wind cut through his thin jacket, a reminder that winter would soon arrive and bring with it heating bills he could barely afford. The last thing he expected was to see a well-dressed woman collapse right in front of him. She crumpled suddenly like a marionette whose strings had been cut. Her expensive camel coat splayed around her on the dirty sidewalk as she clutched her chest, gasping for air. Her face framed by elegant, silver-streaked hair, contorted in pain, the kind of pain Michael recognized instantly. Without hesitation, he dropped his lunchbox. The plastic container clattered against the concrete, spilling the remains of his simple lunch, the sandwich he'd saved half of so Lily would have something extra for her school lunch tomorrow. None of that mattered now. Ma'am, can you hear me?" Michael's voice was steady despite the adrenaline surging through his veins. He knelt beside her on the cold pavement, loosening her silk scarf with gentle efficiency. Bystanders gathered, their phones raised to capture the drama unfolding, but none stepped forward to help. The woman's eyes, a striking steel blue, found his wide with fear and desperation. "I can't breathe," she managed, between gasps. Michael positioned his hands on her chest. "I'm going to help you. Stay with me." As he performed CPR on the cold pavement, drawing curious stares from passing strangers, Michael had no idea he was saving the life of Olivia Sterling, one of the wealthiest women in America. He was simply doing what felt right, what his late wife would have wanted him to do. When the paramedics arrived and whisked her away, Michael quietly gathered his scattered belongings and headed home, never expecting to see her again. But what Olivia Sterling did next would change everything for this struggling father who could barely make ends meet. What neither of them realized was that fate had already intertwined their lives once before, years ago, a connection buried in the past that would soon resurface and challenge everything they thought they knew about each other. The alarm clock's shrill cry pierced through the thin walls of the small two-bedroom apartment at 5:30 in the morning, just as it had every weekday for the past 2 years. Michael Thompson's calloused hand reached out from beneath the worn comforter, silencing the noise before it could wake Lily. In the gray pre-dawn light filtering through curtains that had seen better days, he could make out the familiar shapes of their modest home, the second-hand furniture arranged with care, the stack of unpaid bills on the kitchen counter that he'd deal with later, and the refrigerator covered in Lily's colorful drawings that somehow made everything feel a little brighter. Michael sat on the edge of his bed for a moment, running his hands through hair that was showing more gray each month despite his 34 years. His body ached from yesterday's double shift at the warehouse, and he knew today would bring more of the same backbreaking work. But as he heard Lily stirring in the next room, a soft smile crossed his weathered face. She was his reason for everything, his motivation to keep pushing forward when the weight of responsibility threatened to crush him. "Daddy," came a small voice from the doorway. Lily stood there in her favorite pajamas, pink ones with cartoon unicorns that Rachel had bought her for Christmas 3 years ago before everything changed. The fabric was starting to fray at the edges, but Lily refused to let him replace them. They were her connection to the mother she remembered in fragments and fading photographs. "Morning sunshine," Michael said, opening his arms wide. Lily patted across the cold linoleum floor and climbed onto his lap, her small arms wrapping around his neck. For a moment, the world felt complete again. In these quiet morning minutes before the day's struggles began, he could almost pretend that Rachel might walk through the door any moment, coffee in hand, that brilliant smile lighting up her face. "Did you sleep okay?" he asked, smoothing down Lily's tangled brown hair that was so much like her mother's. "I dreamed about Mommy again," Lily said matter-of-factly, the way children do when discussing profound things that adults struggle to comprehend. "She was making pancakes and she said to tell you not to worry so much." Michael felt his throat tighten. Even in death, Rachel was still taking care of them both. "That sounds like something she'd say." He managed kissing the top of Lily's head. "How about we make some breakfast, not pancakes, but I think we've got enough for scrambled eggs." Their morning routine unfolded with practiced efficiency, born of necessity. Michael prepared a simple breakfast while Lily got dressed for school, their conversation flowing easily despite the early hour. She chatted about her upcoming school project on community helpers, how her teacher, Mrs. Rodriguez, had complimented her reading, and whether they could afford to get a goldfish for her birthday next month. We'll see about the goldfish. Michael said the same response he gave to most of Lily's requests these days. It wasn't a no, but it wasn't a yes either. It was the careful answer of a parent who'd learned to navigate between hope and harsh reality. As they shared their eggs at the small kitchen table, the same table where Rachel had announced her pregnancy 8 years ago, where they'd celebrated Lily's first words, where they'd held each other and cried after the doctors delivered the news that would change everything, Michael watched his daughter's animated face and marveled at her resilience. She'd been only 6 when Rachel lost her battle with cancer, yet she'd adapted with a grace that humbled him daily. Across town in a penthouse overlooking the city skyline, Olivia Sterling stood at her floor-to-ceiling windows watching the sunrise paint the sky in hues of pink and gold. In her hand, a porcelain cup of green tea had long gone cold, forgotten as she lost herself in thought. 3 days had passed since her collapse on that downtown sidewalk, since a stranger's hands had kept her heart beating when it had decided to stop. The doctors called it a warning, a severe angina episode that could have progressed to a full cardiac arrest had it not been for the immediate intervention. At 52, Olivia had built Sterling Industries from her father's modest manufacturing business into a multinational corporation worth billions. She was known for her 16-hour workdays, her refusal to delegate critical decisions, and her ability to outwork competitors half her age. The boardroom walls had witnessed countless deals, closed by her sharp intellect and unwavering resolve. But for the first time in her career, she felt vulnerable, mortal. The steady beeping of medical equipment in the hospital had been a metronome counting down the seconds of her life. Seconds she owed to a stranger who had disappeared as quickly as he had appeared. Her reflection in the window showed a woman impeccably put together, silver-streaked dark hair in a sleek bob, tailored charcoal suit, minimal jewelry save for her mother's pearl earrings, but her eyes betrayed the unease that had settled in her chest alongside the lingering soreness from the CPR compressions. The penthouse with its minimalist design and museum-quality art suddenly felt cavernous and empty. 40 floors above the city, she was isolated from the world below, a world where strangers sometimes saved each other without expectation of reward. "Ms. Sterling," her assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Mr. Chen is here with the security team's report." Olivia pressed the response button. "Send them in." Richard Chen, her COO and closest business confidant for the past decade, entered with David Walsh, head of security. Both men carried the careful expressions of those bearing news they weren't sure how to deliver. "Olivia," Richard began, using her first name as he only did in private meetings. "We've identified him, the man who helped you." Her heart quickened. "Show me." David opened a folder containing surveillance images, traffic camera stills, and a comprehensive profile assembled with the efficiency that only corporate resources could command. "Michael Thompson, 34 years old, widowed, 1 daughter." David read, "Works at Morrison Warehouse on the East Side. Wife died of cancer 2 years ago. Financial records show he's struggling but has never missed a rent payment." Olivia studied the expanded photographs. Even in the grainy security footage, she could see the character in Michael's face, a kind of weathered handsomeness that came from hard work and harder times, but also a gentleness around his eyes that spoke of compassion. "He has a daughter," she asked, focusing on that detail. "Lily Thompson, 8 years old, honor roll student at Riverside Elementary." Something in Olivia's chest tightened, not the dangerous tightness of another cardiac episode, but an emotional response she hadn't felt in years. Here was a man who'd saved her life while carrying burdens she could barely imagine, a widowed father working warehouse jobs to support his young daughter, yet he'd still stopped to help a stranger. "Riverside Elementary," she repeated the name, triggering something in her memory. "Where is that exactly?" "East Side, near the old textile district," Richard supplied. "Not the best neighborhood, but not the worst." Olivia moved to her desk and opened her laptop, typing rapidly. "My mother, she volunteered at a hospital on the East Side before she died. Something about this feels familiar." Richard and David exchanged glances, accustomed to Olivia's intuitive leaps, but unsure where this one was leading. After several minutes of searching through digitized family records, Olivia's breath caught. On the screen was a hospital volunteer roster from 7 years ago. They're highlighted in yellow: Eleanor Sterling, Oncology Ward, Memorial East. Memorial East. That's where his wife would have been treated, she whispered. My mother was volunteering in the cancer ward the same time Rachel Thompson was a patient there. The coincidence was too precise to ignore. Fate had connected them years before through the kindness of her mother and the suffering of his family. And now through his kindness, their paths had crossed again. I want to meet him, Olivia said firmly, closing her laptop. Arrange it. Today. Olivia, Richard cautioned, perhaps it would be better to send a representative a nice thank you note, maybe a gift. No. Her voice carried the authority that had built a business empire. This isn't about corporate gratitude or public relations. This is personal. This man saved my life when he could have walked past like everyone else did. And there might be a connection here that goes beyond coincidence. The knock on Michael's apartment door came at 6:30 that evening, just as he was helping Lily with her math homework at their small kitchen table. He frowned, checking the time on the microwave clock. They weren't expecting anyone, and their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Rodriguez, usually called before stopping by. Stay here, sweetheart, he told Lily, rising from his chair with the caution of someone who'd learned that unexpected visitors rarely brought good news. Through the peephole, he saw a woman in an expensive-looking coat standing in the hallway. She appeared nervous, shifting her weight from one foot to the other, and Michael noticed she was holding what looked like a handwritten envelope. She didn't look like a bill collector or social worker, but her presence still made him uneasy. Can I help you? He asked through the door. Mr. Thompson, my name is Olivia Sterling. I believe you helped me on Tuesday afternoon downtown. I was hoping we could talk for a moment. Michael's brow furrowed in confusion. The name sounded vaguely familiar, but he couldn't place it immediately. Then the memory surfaced, the well-dressed woman who'd collapsed on the sidewalk, the heart attack, the paramedics. But how had she found his address? He opened the door, keeping the chain latched. I'm sorry, I don't understand. How did you find me? Please, Olivia, said her voice carrying a mix of urgency and vulnerability that had surprised him. I know this is unusual, and I know you probably want to forget what happened, but I needed to find you. You saved my life. Michael studied her face through the gap in the door. She looked healthier than she had lying on the sidewalk, but there was something in her eyes, a sincerity that convinced him she wasn't there to cause trouble. Still, he glanced back at Lily, who was watching from the kitchen table with curious 8-year-old eyes. Just a minute, he said, closing the door to remove the chain. When he opened it again, Olivia Sterling stood before him with a grateful smile that transformed her entire face. Thank you for agreeing to see me, she said. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important. Just homework, Michael replied, still feeling off balance. Please come in, though I have to warn you, the place isn't much to look at. Olivia stepped into the small apartment, and Michael saw it suddenly through her eyes, the second-hand furniture arranged with care, but showing its age, the stack of bills on the counter. He hadn't had time to hide the careful organization that spoke of someone making the most of very little space. But what struck Olivia most were Lily's drawings covering the refrigerator, bright splashes of color that brought life to the modest kitchen. Daddy, who's the lady? Lily asked from her seat at the table, her math worksheet forgotten. This is Ms. Sterling, Michael said. She's the person I helped the other day. Lily's face brightened with understanding. The sick lady, are you feeling it better now? Olivia's heart melted at the genuine concern in the child's voice. Much better, thank you. And please call me Olivia. What's your name? Lily Thompson. I'm 8 years old and I'm in 3rd grade. Did my daddy really save your life? He absolutely did, Olivia said, settling into the chair Michael offered. Your father is a hero. Michael felt heat rise in his cheeks. I just did what anyone would do. How are you feeling? You looked pretty bad there for a while. I was bad there for a while, Olivia admitted. The doctor said if you hadn't acted so quickly, I might not have made it. She reached into her purse and withdrew the handwritten envelope. Unlike the typed formal communications that usually bore her name, this letter had been written in her own careful script, each word chosen with deliberation. This is for you, she said, offering the envelope to Michael. But before you open it, I want you to know that finding you has been one of the most important things I've ever done. Michael accepted the envelope with hesitation, his calloused fingers careful with the expensive paper. You really didn't need to go to all this trouble. I'm just glad you're okay. As he read the letter, Olivia watched his face, noting the way his eyes widened slightly, then narrowed with what looked like discomfort. When he finished, he carefully folded the letter and set it on the table. This is very generous, he said quietly, but I can't accept this. Olivia had anticipated this response. The letter contained a check for $50,000 money that could solve Michael's immediate financial problems and provide security for Lily's future. But she'd also learned enough about Michael Thompson to know that his pride might be as strong as his compassion. Mr. Thompson, Michael, you saved my life. That's not something that can be repaid with words alone. It can be repaid with words, Michael replied firmly. Knowing you're okay. Knowing you took the time to find me and say thank you. That's enough. More than enough. Lily looked between the adults, sensing tension she didn't fully understand. Daddy, what's in the letter? Nothing for you to worry about, sweetheart, Michael said, then turned back to Olivia. Ma'am, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I didn't help you expecting anything in return. Taking money for it would make it feel like I was paid to care about another human being. Olivia felt a stab of admiration mixed with frustration. Here was a man who could clearly use financial help, yet he was refusing what most people would consider a windfall because accepting it would compromise his principles. It was both noble and heartbreaking. What if it wasn't payment, she asked carefully. What if it was just one person helping another the way you helped me? Michael shook his head. That's kind of you to say, but we both know there's a difference. You don't owe me anything, Ms. Sterling. Really, Olivia glanced around the small apartment again, taking in the careful way everything was arranged to maximize the limited space. The way Michael's work clothes were neatly hung on a hook by the door, the way Lily's school papers were proudly displayed on the refrigerator alongside her artwork. This was the home of people who took care of what they had, who found ways to make less feel like enough. Can I ask you something? Olivia said. Do you know who I am? Michael hesitated. The woman I helped. Beyond that, no. I'm the CEO of Sterling Industries. His expression remained unchanged. I'm sorry I don't follow business news much. The humility in his response touched her. Most people would have immediately recognized her name, or at least pretended to. There's something else, Olivia continued, her voice softening. Something that might explain why I feel so connected to this situation. My mother, Eleanor Sterling, volunteered at Memorial East Hospital about 7 years ago, in the oncology ward. Michael went very still, his eyes suddenly sharp with focus. Eleanor, the volunteer with the pearl earrings who brought books to the patients. Olivia's hand instinctively went to her ear where she wore those same pearls. Yes, that was my mother. She was kind to Rachel, my wife, during her treatments. Michael said, his voice rough with emotion. She would read to her when I couldn't be there because of work. She even brought special treats for Lily when she visited. He swallowed hard. Your mother made some of Rachel's darkest days a little brighter. Lily looked up at the mention of her mother. The lady with the cookies, I remember her. The coincidence stunned them both into momentary silence. The universe had connected them years ago through kindness and suffering, and now had brought them full circle through another act of kindness. I had no idea, Michael said finally. When did she? 5 years ago, Olivia replied. Heart failure like what almost happened to me. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Eleanor Sterling had comforted Rachel Thompson in her final months, and now Michael Thompson had saved Eleanor's daughter from a similar fate. Olivia reached across the table not for the letter with the check, but for Michael's hand. Her manicured fingers were smooth against his calloused palm. Now, do you understand this isn't charity? This is the universe giving me a chance to complete a circle that my mother started. Please let me help you the way you helped me, the way my mother tried to help your family. Michael looked at his daughter, bent over her math problems, with the same concentration her mother had brought to everything she did. He thought about the bills on the counter, the grocery budget that never quite stretched to the end of the month, the dreams he had for Lily's future that seemed as distant as the stars she loved to count. I need to think about it, he said finally. Olivia nodded, recognizing the first crack in his resistance. That's all I ask, think about it. As she prepared to leave, a thought occurred to her, a different approach that might preserve Michael's dignity while still allowing her to express her gratitude. Actually, there might be another way I could thank you, she said carefully. Sterling Industries is looking for a facilities coordinator for our main campus. It's a real position with real responsibilities overseeing maintenance, safety protocols, building operations. The salary is $65,000 a year, plus health insurance, dental, and a retirement plan. Michael's expression shifted from polite resistance to cautious interest. What qualifications would I need for something like that? You've worked in warehouses, which means you understand logistics and safety requirements. You have mechanical aptitude. I can see that from how well-maintained everything is here, despite limited resources. Most importantly, you care about doing things right. She reached into her purse and produced a business card, placing it on the table. Think about that too. No pressure, no obligation. Just think about it. After Olivia left, Michael sat on the couch with Lily, both of them looking at the business card on their coffee table. It seemed to glow with possibility, representing a world so different from their current life that it felt almost fictional. "What do you think, sweetheart?" Michael asked. "I think she's nice," Lily said thoughtfully. "And I think Mommy would want you to take the job. She always said, good things happen to good people, but sometimes you have to be brave enough to say yes." Michael pulled his daughter close, marveling once again at her wisdom. Maybe it was time to be brave enough to say yes to something better. That night, as Lily slept, Michael took out the Warren family photo he kept in his wallet. In it, Rachel cradled newborn Lily while Michael looked on with the stunned expression of a new father. Rachel's eyes sparkled with joy and mischief, her dark hair falling in waves around her shoulders. "What should I do, Rach?" he whispered to the photograph. "It feels like charity, but also like opportunity, like the universe might be giving us a second chance." He could almost hear her practical, loving voice. "Take the chance, Michael. Not just for Lily, but for yourself too. You deserve good things." Olivia Sterling was not accustomed to waiting for answers. In the corporate world, her decisions were implemented immediately, her strategies executed without hesitation. But as days passed with no word from Michael Thompson, she found herself uncharacteristically anxious. "He'll call," Richard assured her during their morning briefing. "A job like that with those benefits, he'd be crazy not to." "You don't understand," Olivia replied, staring out at the city spread below her office windows. "This isn't about logic or economics for him. It's about pride, dignity. Things that don't pay the bills," Richard said pragmatically. "Things that define who we are." She countered, thinking of her own father's unyielding principles that had sometimes cost the company money, but had built a reputation for integrity that was worth far more in the long run. On the fourth day, as Olivia was reviewing the quarterly projections, her assistant buzzed through. "Miss Sterling, there's a Michael Thompson on line 2. Her heart jumped. "I'll take it." There was a moment of silence after she picked up, then Michael's voice steady but tentative. "Ms. Sterling, it's Michael Thompson." "Michael, thank you for calling. And please, it's Olivia." Another pause. "I've been thinking about your offer. The job, not the money." And she tried to keep the eagerness out of her voice. "I'd like to learn more about it if that's still an option." Relief flooded through her. "Absolutely. Can you come to the Sterling Industries building tomorrow morning? Say 9 a.m. I'll have HR prepare everything and I can show you around personally." "I'd need to take Lily to school first. Could we make it 9:30? The fact that he was putting his daughter's routine first, even when facing a potentially life-changing opportunity, only increased Olivia's respect for him. 9:30 is perfect. Just ask for me at the front desk." After they hung up, Olivia sat at her desk, staring at the phone. Something about this connection with Michael Thompson felt significant beyond the coincidence of their past associations. It felt like an opportunity to rediscover parts of herself that had been buried under balance sheets in boardroom battles, the parts that her mother had nurtured and that had slowly withered in the high-pressure environment she'd created for herself. The Sterling Industries corporate campus was a world away from the industrial district where Michael had spent the last 18 months. Glass towers reached toward the sky, surrounded by manicured gardens and fountains that probably cost more than his annual salary at the warehouse. As he walked through the lobby, his reflection in the polished marble floors reminded him that he was stepping into a universe where everything from the coffee machines to the elevator music spoke of wealth and success. He'd worn his only suit, the one from Rachel's funeral, slightly too loose now from the weight he'd lost in the years since, and had spent an hour the night before polishing his dress shoes to a mirror shine. Lily had helped making it a game, telling him he looked handsome as a prince when he tried it on. "Mr. Thompson," the receptionist smiled warmly, "Ms. Sterling is expecting you. 18th floor, the executive suite." The elevator whisked him upward, his stomach dropping slightly from the speed. When the doors opened, Olivia herself was waiting, not an assistant or HR representative. "Michael, thank you for coming," she said, extending her hand. Today she wore a navy suit that complemented her silver-streaked dark hair and those pearl earrings that now carried so much more meaning to both of them. "Thank you for the opportunity," he replied, suddenly conscious of his calloused hands against her smooth skin. "Before we get to the formal interview and paperwork, I thought you might like a tour of the facility you'd be overseeing." For the next hour, Olivia guided him through the Sterling Industries campus, explaining the various buildings, their functions, and the challenges of maintaining such a complex operation. Michael found himself asking practical questions, seeing inefficiencies that could be improved, noting safety issues that needed addressing. "The backup generator system is outdated," he observed as they examined the mechanical rooms. "If you had a power failure in winter, you could lose heating to the east wing before the secondary systems kicked in." Olivia raised an eyebrow, impressed. "That's exactly the kind of practical knowledge we need. Our last facilities manager was more focused on aesthetics than functionality." As they walked, Michael noticed something unexpected. Employees greeted Olivia with genuine warmth, not just the deference expected for a CEO. She knew many by name, asked after family members, remembered details of conversations from weeks before. This wasn't the cold corporate executive he had expected, but someone who, despite her wealth and power, valued human connection. Their tour ended in a part of the campus Michael hadn't expected to see: a large, bright building set apart from the corporate offices. "This is our on-site childcare center," Olivia explained, leading him inside. The facility was impressive, spacious playrooms, a reading corner filled with books, an outdoor playground visible through large windows. Children of various ages were engaged in activities under the supervision of attentive staff. "All employees have access to this?" Michael asked, thinking of how much easier his life would be if Lily could come to work with him instead of juggling after-school programs and neighbors' help. "Yes, from entry-level to executives. My father believed that supporting families was good business. Happy parents make productive employees." Olivia watched his face carefully. "Lily would be welcome here after school. The center runs until 6 p.m. and they provide homework help, activities, even dinner if needed." Michael's throat tightened with emotion he couldn't express. This single benefit would transform their daily lives in ways Olivia couldn't possibly understand. No more racing to pick Lily up. No more begging favors from Mrs. Rodriguez. No more guilt about leaving his daughter with strangers while he worked late shifts. "I don't know what to say," he managed finally. "Say you'll consider the position," Olivia replied. "The HR director is waiting to discuss the details with you." The meeting with HR was straightforward. The job was legitimate, the salary and benefits as Olivia had described. Michael would be responsible for the maintenance and safety of the entire Sterling campus, managing a team of technicians, coordinating with contractors, and ensuring that the physical infrastructure supported the company's operations. "When would you need an answer?" Michael asked as the meeting concluded. "We'd like to fill the position within 2 weeks," the HR director said, "but Ms. Sterling indicated that she's willing to hold it for you if you need time to consider." Back in Olivia's office, with its panoramic views of the city, Michael struggled to process everything he'd seen and heard. The opportunity was beyond anything he could have imagined. A salary that would eliminate their financial struggles, benefits that would provide security for Lily, a work environment that seemed to value the very principles he tried to live by. But something still held him back, a nagging sense that this was charity disguised as opportunity, that he was being given something he hadn't earned. "You're still hesitating," Olivia observed, sitting across from him in a comfortable seating area rather than behind her imposing desk. "It seems too good to be true," Michael admitted. "Why me? There must be hundreds of qualified candidates for a position like this." Olivia leaned forward, her eyes intense. "Because of what you did on that sidewalk. Not just the CPR, though, that saved my life. It's what your action revealed about your character. You stopped to help when dozens of others walked by. You didn't ask for recognition or reward. You just did what was right because it was right." She gestured toward the window, toward the corporate campus spread below. "Do you know how rare that quality is in this world? I've spent my career surrounded by people seeking advantage, looking for angles, calculating cost-benefit ratios for every action. You acted from pure compassion. That's the kind of person I want working here." Michael was silent, absorbing her words. Put that way, it didn't sound like charity, but like recognition of something valuable he possessed, something that couldn't be measured in degrees or certifications, but was perhaps more important. There's more, Olivia continued, her voice softening. When I learned about my mother's connection to your family, it felt like the universe was sending a message. Eleanor Sterling spent her life trying to make the world better for others. In her memory, I want to do the same. Not as charity, but as continuation of her legacy. The mention of Eleanor, the kind volunteer who had brightened Rachel's darkest days, broke through Michael's final resistance. If their roles were reversed, if he had the means to help the child of someone who had comforted Lily during a crisis, wouldn't he do the same? I need to talk to Lily, he said finally. This would change her life too. Of course. Olivia smiled, recognizing that the tide had turned. Family comes first. Always. As Michael left the Sterling building, the weight of constant worry about money, about Lily's future, about whether he was enough, it was still there, but it felt more manageable now. Olivia Sterling had offered them a chance at something better, and his pride shouldn't be allowed to stand in the way of Lily's opportunities. What he didn't know as he headed home to discuss this new possibility with his daughter was that fate wasn't finished weaving its complex pattern around their lives. The connection between the Thompsons and the Sterlings went deeper than either of them yet realized, a truth buried in corporate archives that would soon emerge to test their newfound relationship in ways neither could imagine. That evening, as Lily excitedly made a list of reasons Daddy should take the new job, Olivia sat in her office long after the building had emptied, looking at an old photograph of her mother volunteering at Memorial East. Eleanor's kindness had formed the first thread connecting their families. Michael's compassion had strengthened that bond. But what would happen when the third thread, the one hidden in her father's private files, came to light? Olivia closed the folder containing the hospital volunteer records and turned instead to a dusty box she'd retrieved from the company's archives. Records from the Sterling Industries expansion 15 years ago, when her father had made the controversial decision to close several smaller factories, including one in the very neighborhood where Michael now lived. She hadn't made the connection until HR ran a more detailed background check on Michael. His father had worked at that factory for 20 years before the closure forced him into early retirement. The financial strain had contributed to his death from a heart attack just 2 years later. In essence, the Sterling family had played a role in the hardships the Thompsons had endured even before Rachel's illness. What am I going to do with this? Olivia whispered to the empty office, the weight of this revelation pressing against her chest like the beginnings of another cardiac episode. To tell Michael might destroy the fragile trust they were building. To keep it secret felt like a betrayal of that same trust. Outside her window, the city lights twinkled like stars, indifferent to the moral dilemma unfolding in the glass tower above them. Somewhere out there, Michael and Lily were planning for a brighter future, a future Olivia had offered them, partly to repay a debt she hadn't even known existed. The universe had a strange sense of humor bringing them together this way. But was it offering redemption or setting the stage for an even more painful collision of past and present? Tomorrow, Michael would accept the job offer. Tomorrow, they would begin working together. Tomorrow, the next chapter of their intertwined story would begin. And somewhere in the shadows, watching this unexpected alliance with growing concern, were those who saw Olivia's sudden interest in a warehouse worker as a sign of weakness, a vulnerability to be exploited in their long-planned takeover of Sterling Industries. The pieces were all in motion now, moving toward a confrontation none of them could foresee. Michael's first day at Sterling Industries began with a sunrise that painted the sky in hues of promise. He stood before the bathroom mirror, adjusting his tie, a new one Lily had insisted on buying, with her saved allowance money. "You can't wear the sad tie to your new job," she declared with 8-year-old certainty. "You need a happy tie." The happy tie was blue with small yellow stars, chosen because stars give wishes, and I wish for you to be happy at work, Daddy. Now, as his fingers fumbled with the unfamiliar pattern, Michael's throat tightened with emotion. This new beginning wasn't just for him, it was for both of them. "Daddy, we're going to be late," Lily called from the kitchen, where she was carefully packing his lunch in her Disney princess lunchbox, insisting it would bring him luck. "Coming, sweetheart," he replied, giving himself one last look. The man in the mirror was the same weathered face, same kind eyes, but something had changed. There was a straightness to his shoulders that hadn't been there before, a lightness in his chest where worry had made its home for so long. Hope. That was the difference. For the first time in 2 years, Michael Thompson was allowing himself to hope. The Sterling Industries campus hummed with a morning activity as Michael presented his new ID badge to security. Employees streamed through the sleek lobby carrying coffee cups and engaged in animated conversation. This world of glass and steel felt alien after the dust and noise of the warehouse, but the security guard's friendly nod made it seem a fraction more welcoming. "Mr. Thompson," a voice called from across the lobby. Janet Walsh, the outgoing facilities manager, who would be training him for the next 2 weeks, approached with a warm smile. In her 60s, with salt and pepper hair cut in a practical bob, she had the efficient manner of someone who'd spent decades solving problems. "Ready for day one?" "As ready as I'll ever be," Michael replied, grateful for her steadying presence. "Excellent. I've prepared orientation materials, but I find the best way to learn this job is to dive right in. We've got a full schedule systems overview this morning, team introductions after lunch, and Ms. Sterling asked to see you at 4. Michael's pulse quickened at the mention of Olivia. Since accepting the position a week ago, he hadn't seen her, dealing instead with HR and Janet for his onboarding. He wondered if their relationship would be different now that he was an employee rather than the recipient of her gratitude. The morning passed in a blur of information: building schematics, maintenance schedules, vendor contracts, emergency protocols. Michael absorbed it all with the focus of a man determined to prove he deserved this chance. His practical experience at the warehouse translated surprisingly well to the larger-scale operations of Sterling Industries, and Janet seemed impressed by his questions and insights. "You've got good instincts," she commented as they examined the HVAC control room. "Most people see all these systems as separate problems. You're already thinking about how they interact." "At the warehouse, if one thing broke down, it usually affected 3 other things," Michael explained. "You learn to see the connections." By lunchtime, his head was swimming with information, but he felt increasingly confident. This wasn't charity, this was a job he could actually do well. In the employee cafeteria, a far cry from the grimy break room at Morrison Warehouse, Janet introduced him to his team: 5 maintenance technicians, 2 safety officers, and a procurement specialist. They were a diverse group ranging from 20-something Jose, who specialized in electrical systems, to veteran Frank, who'd been with Sterling Industries for nearly 30 years. "So you're the guy who saved the boss lady," Frank said bluntly as they sat with their trays. "Word travels fast around here." Michael shifted uncomfortably. "I just happened to be in the right place at the right time." "Don't let him fool you," Janet interjected. "Ms. Sterling said he performed textbook CPR while everyone else just stood around taking videos with their phones." "My wife was a nurse," Michael explained, the familiar ache accompanying any mention of Rachel. "She made sure I knew the basics." "Well, we're glad you did," said Diane, the safety coordinator. "Says, Sterling's different from most executives. She actually cares about the people who work here. Her father was the same way." "Speaking of the old man," Frank lowered his voice, leaning in. "Have you heard about Phoenix?" Janet shot him a warning look. "Frank, that's not appropriate lunch conversation." "What's Phoenix?" Michael asked, curiosity piqued by their exchange. An awkward silence fell over the table. Finally, Diane spoke. "It's nothing, just old corporate politics." Before Michael could press further, his phone vibrated with a text message from the child care center. "Lily arrived safely from school. She wants you to know she made a new friend named Emma, and they're building a super castle together." The simple message brought a smile to his face, momentarily distracting him from the mysterious Phoenix. He showed the text to Janet, who beamed. "The child care center is one of Ms. Sterling's pet projects," she explained. "Her father started it, but she's expanded it considerably. Child of the center yourself, aren't you, Jose?" The young electrician nodded. "My mom was a receptionist here. I practically grew up in that child care center. Now my little sister goes there while mom works in accounting." Michael absorbed this information, adding it to his growing understanding of Olivia Sterling. The woman who ran this corporate empire wasn't just the efficient CEO he'd glimpsed in business profiles. She was someone who continued her family's tradition of caring for employees and their families. After lunch, Janet took him on a tour of the employee housing complex adjacent to the campus, another Sterling initiative that provided affordable apartments for workers who would otherwise face long commutes. "These units are always waitlisted," Janet explained as they walked through the courtyard. "Reasonable rent, walking distance to work priority spots in the child care center." For a single parent or young family, it's a godsend. Michael studied the modest but well-maintained buildings with growing interest. His current apartment was a 45-minute bus ride from Sterling Industries, and the idea of Lily being able to walk to the childcare center from their home was appealing. But he was getting ahead of himself. He'd only just started the job. "Does everyone who works here live in company housing?" he asked. "No, maybe 15% of employees. It started as a program for entry-level workers who couldn't afford the rents closer to downtown, but it's expanded over the years." Janet checked her watch. "We should head back. Ms. Sterling will be expecting you soon." As they walked back toward the main building, Michael noticed a sleek black car pulling up to the executive entrance. Three men in expensive suits emerged, their expressions serious as they strode into the building like they owned it. "Who are they?" he asked Janet. Her face tightened. "Apex Capital representatives. They've been sniffing around Sterling Industries for months looking for weaknesses." She lowered her voice. "Between us, they're vultures. They buy companies, strip them for parts, and lay off half the workforce. Everything the Sterlings built, the child care center, employee housing profit sharing, would be gone in a heartbeat if they got control." Michael felt a chill at her words. The opportunities Sterling Industries provided weren't just about profits. They were about people. People like him and Lily who needed more than just a paycheck to build a decent life. "How likely is that to happen?" he asked. Janet shook her head. "Miss Sterling would never sell willingly, but Apex is persistent and they play dirty. Just last month, we had an unexplained equipment failure that shut down production for 3 days. Very convenient timing for Apex to point out to shareholders how Sterling's value was dropping." Michael filed this information away as they continued toward the executive floor. The stakes were higher than he'd realized. This wasn't just a job. It was part of something bigger, something worth protecting. Olivia Sterling's office was a study in controlled elegance, floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic city views, modern furniture in muted tones, and surprisingly few of the ostentatious displays of wealth Michael had expected. What caught his eye instead were the photographs arranged on a side table. Eleanor Sterling, in her volunteer uniform at the hospital, a younger Olivia with a stern-looking man who must be her father, a group shot of employees breaking ground on what appeared to be the childcare center. "Michael," Olivia greeted him, rising from behind her desk. Today she wore a charcoal gray suit that complemented her silver-streaked dark hair, Eleanor's pearl earrings catching the afternoon light. "How was your first day?" "Overwhelming," he admitted with a small smile. "But in a good way. Janet's an excellent teacher. She's irreplaceable. I've been dreading her retirement." Olivia gestured for him to sit in one of the comfortable chairs by the window, rather than across from her desk, a subtle but significant choice that put them on more equal footing. The childcare center texted that Lily's settling in well. "She made a friend already." "That's typical. Lily never meets a stranger." "Like her father," Olivia observed. "You seem to have made quite an impression on your team already." Michael felt a flush of pride at her words. "They're good people, knowledgeable, dedicated." "That's the Sterling difference," Olivia said, a hint of fierceness entering her voice. "We don't just employ people, we invest in them. My father understood that loyalty and quality come from treating workers like they matter." "I noticed the Apex Capital representatives arriving earlier." Michael ventured, curious about her reaction. Olivia's expression darkened. "You don't miss much, do you?" "Yes, our persistent suitors. They've made 3 buyout offers in the past year, each one rejected. Now they're trying to convince our board that I'm running the company into the ground with excessive employee benefits." "That doesn't seem to be the case from what I've seen today. Sterling Industries has been profitable for 47 consecutive years," she said with quiet pride. "We've weathered recessions, market shifts, and technological revolutions without ever laying off employees or cutting benefits. My father built this company on the radical notion that treating people well is good business." "So, why does Apex want it so badly?" Olivia's eyes met his, sharp with intelligence and worry. "Our real estate holdings alone are worth billions. Our patents and intellectual property even more. But what they really want is to dismantle everything we've built and extract maximum short-term profit regardless of the human cost." Michael thought of Jose, whose entire family depended on Sterling Industries, not just for employment, but for housing and childcare. Of the maintenance team who spoke of their jobs with pride rather than resignation. Of Lily building a super castle with her new friend in a childcare center that would have been unaffordable for a single father on a warehouse salary. That would be a tragedy, he said simply. Yes, it would. Olivia's gaze softened. Which is why I wanted to speak with you today. Not just as your new employer, but as someone who values your perspective. You see things clearly, Michael. You understand what matters. The compliment warmed him in unexpected ways. In the warehouse, his observations and suggestions had been dismissed or ignored by management focused only on quotas and costs. To have his insight valued by someone like Olivia Sterling was both unfamiliar and deeply gratifying. I'd like you to be my eyes and ears on the ground, she continued. The executive team gives me polished reports, but I need to know what's really happening. Maintenance issues, safety concerns, employee morale, anything that doesn't seem right. You think something's wrong? Michael asked, picking up on the undertone in her request. Olivia hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. The equipment failure Janet probably told you about, it wasn't an accident. Someone deliberately sabotaged our main production line subtly enough that it looked like mechanical failure, but definitively intentional, according to the forensic engineers. You think Apex is behind it? I can't prove anything, but the timing was suspiciously convenient. They had a full presentation ready for our shareholders about Sterling's infrastructure problems just days after the failure. Michael's mind raced, connecting dots. So you want me to watch for similar sabotage attempts? Among other things, your background gives you a unique perspective. You know how things actually work, not just how they appear on reports. Olivia leaned forward, her expression intense. I'm not asking you to spy, Michael. I'm asking you to help me protect what we've built here. The "we" wasn't lost on him. Olivia was already including him in the Sterling community, making their cause his cause. And surprisingly, it didn't feel manipulative. It felt right. The values she described, taking care of people, building something sustainable, doing business with integrity, were values he believed in too. I'll keep my eyes open, he promised. For what it's worth, I think what you've built here is worth protecting. Olivia's smile transformed her face, removing years of stress and revealing the woman beneath the CEO exterior. Thank you, Michael. That means more than you know. As he left her office, Michael couldn't help feeling that his role at Sterling Industries might be more significant than he'd initially thought. He wasn't just maintaining buildings, he was helping to preserve a vision of business that put people first, a vision increasingly under threat. What he didn't know was how personal that threat would soon become. The first month at Sterling Industries passed in a whirlwind of learning and adjustment. Michael absorbed Janet's decades of institutional knowledge like a sponge, making the facility's role his own, with a combination of practical problem-solving and genuine care for the people who work there. Lily thrived in the childcare center, her friendship with Emma blossoming into daily adventures. For the first time since Rachel's death, Michael saw his daughter truly carefree, making art projects, participating in science activities, even beginning to learn Spanish from one of the caregivers. Their financial situation improved dramatically. Michael's salary covered their expenses with room to spare, allowing him to start paying down Rachel's medical bills and even begin a modest college fund for Lily. They moved into a 2-bedroom apartment in the Sterling Employee Housing Complex, cutting his commute to a 5-minute walk and giving Lily a room of her own decorated with the space-themed bedding she'd coveted, but he'd never been able to afford. Most surprisingly, Michael's relationship with Olivia evolved from employer-employee to something approaching friendship. Their weekly meetings to discuss facilities issues often extended beyond professional matters to personal conversations. Books they'd both read, memories of Eleanor's kindness, Lily's latest accomplishments. Olivia even joined them for dinner one evening at their new apartment, bringing a children's astronomy book for Lily that became her nightly reading. But beneath this new stability, Michael sensed growing tensions within Sterling Industries. The Apex representatives were increasingly present, their sleek black car often parked in the executive lot. Board meetings ran longer, sometimes late into the night, with Olivia emerging looking drained but determined. Security measures tightened throughout the campus, with new protocols implemented and access restricted to certain areas. The mysterious Phoenix Frank had mentioned surfaced occasionally in hushed conversations that stopped when Michael approached. Whatever it was, it seemed to divide longtime employees, some speaking of it with reverence, others with discomfort or outright disapproval. Then came the night that changed everything. Michael was working late reviewing contractor bids for the HVAC upgrades Olivia had approved. The offices were mostly empty, the maintenance staff reduced to a skeleton crew for the overnight shift. His phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Rodriguez, who was watching Lily for the evening. Lily's fine had dinner, now watching a movie. Take your time. Relieved, he returned to the complex spreadsheets, comparing vendor qualifications and pricing. The knock on his office door startled him. "Sorry to disturb you," said Jose, the young electrician. His usually cheerful face was tight with worry. "But I found something you should see." "What is it?" Michael asked, immediately alert to the tension in Jose's voice. "It's easier if I show you, in the main production facility." Michael followed Jose through the deserted corridors and across the campus to the manufacturing building that formed the heart of Sterling's operations. The massive space, normally bustling with the activity, was eerily quiet. After hours, the machinery silhouetted like sleeping giants in the dim emergency lighting. Jose led him to an electrical panel near the main assembly line. "I was doing routine maintenance and noticed this." He pointed to a small device attached to the interior wiring, nearly invisible unless you knew where to look. "It's not standard equipment." Michael leaned closer, examining the device without touching it. "Some kind of timer." "I think so, connected to the control systems for the cooling units." Jose's voice dropped lower. "If those fail while the assembly line is running at capacity, overheating, shutdown, possible fire." Michael finished the thought, a chill running down his spine. This wasn't a subtle sabotage like the previous incident. This was potentially catastrophic. "When did you check this panel last?" 3 days ago. It wasn't there then." "You're sure?" Jose nodded, his expression grave. "I have a photographic memory for electrical systems." "That's new." Michael made a quick decision. "Don't touch anything. I need to call Ms. Sterling." Olivia answered on the first ring, her voice sharp with concern when he explained what they'd found. "I'm still in the building." "Stay there. I'm coming down with security." 20 minutes later, Olivia and the head of security examined the device while Michael and Jose stood back. The security chief, a former military man named Davis, carefully photographed everything before disconnecting the device. "Definitely a timer," he confirmed grimly. "Set to trigger at 10 a.m. tomorrow, right when production would be at peak capacity." Olivia's face was pale but composed, her eyes hard as she studied the device. "Who had access to this area in the past 3 days?" "According to the logs, maintenance staff, production supervisors, and—" Davis hesitated. "The Apex representatives who toured the facility yesterday." "Of course," Olivia said bitterly. "A major equipment failure right before the shareholder meeting would be perfectly timed for them to swoop in with another takeover bid." "We should call the police," Michael suggested. Olivia shook her head. "And tell them what we have suspicions, but no proof. Apex would claim we planted the device ourselves to discredit them." She turned to Jose. "Thank you for your vigilance. This could have been disastrous." The young electrician straightened with pride at her recognition. "Just doing my job, Ms. Sterling." "You did more than that. You may have saved lives." Olivia turned to Michael. "Walk with me back to the office. We need to discuss next steps." As they crossed the darkened campus, Olivia's heels clicking sharply against the pavement, Michael studied her profile, the determined set of her jaw, the tension in her shoulders. Despite the late hour and the shock of what they'd discovered, she radiated controlled strength. "You don't seem surprised," he observed, "about the sabotage attempt." "I'm not. Disappointed in humanity perhaps, but not surprised." Olivia's pace didn't slow. "This is how Apex operates. They create problems, then present themselves as the solution. 3 companies in our sector have fallen to them using similar tactics. But this goes beyond corporate tactics. This could have hurt people. That's a cost they're willing to accept." The bitterness in her voice was palpable. "The workers on that assembly line aren't people to them. They're expenses on a spreadsheet." In her office, Olivia poured 2 glasses of amber liquid from a crystal decanter. "Scotch, my father's preferred crisis management tool." She handed one to Michael. "You look like you could use it." He accepted the glass but didn't drink immediately. "What happens now?" "We increase security, install cameras covering every inch of the production facilities, implement a buddy system for maintenance checks." Olivia took a sip of her scotch, the liquid catching the light as she swirled it. And we accelerate Phoenix. There it was, the mysterious Phoenix mentioned so casually yet clearly significant. Michael hesitated, then decided to ask directly. What exactly is Phoenix? Olivia studied him for a long moment, as if weighing something in her mind. Then she set down her glass and moved to a painting on the wall, an abstract rendering of flames in vibrant oranges and reds. She swung the painting away from the wall, revealing a safe. After entering a combination, she removed a thick folder stamped with the word Phoenix in bold red letters. Phoenix was my father's contingency plan, she explained, returning to her seat and opening the folder. His way of ensuring that Sterling Industries would never fall into the hands of people who would destroy what he built. Inside were legal documents, architectural plans, and what appeared to be financial statements. Olivia spread them on the coffee table between them. Sterling Industries doesn't just own this campus. We own substantial real estate throughout the city, housing developments, community centers, even the hospital where my mother volunteered, all held by separate subsidiaries and trusts. She pointed to a complex organizational chart. If Apex or any similar entity gains control of Sterling, these assets automatically transfer to a foundation dedicated to continuing our community programs with ironclad protections against sale or liquidation. Michael studied the documents with growing amazement. You're saying even if they take over the company, they get the manufacturing facilities and patents, yes, but not the real estate, not the community infrastructure, and not the loyalty of our workforce. Olivia's eyes gleamed with fierce pride. Phoenix isn't about saving the company. It's about saving what matters most, the people and communities we support. That's brilliant, Michael said, genuinely impressed by the foresight and complexity of the plan. But why all the secrecy? Why do some employees seem uncomfortable about it? Olivia's expression shadowed. Because Phoenix has evolved over time. My father's original plan was defensive, protect assets, preserve programs. But after he died, he expanded it. She turned to another section of the folder, revealing what looked like employee profiles and investment structures. The most valuable asset at Sterling isn't our buildings or patents, it's our people. Phoenix now includes a pathway for employee ownership if Apex succeeds. Key personnel would receive substantial stakes in the restructured organization. Michael began to understand the ethical complexity. So some employees stand to benefit financially if Apex takes over. Potentially, yes. It creates divided loyalties, which is why I've kept the full plan confidential. Olivia leaned back suddenly, looking tired. I'm not naive, Michael. I know some will see this as self-serving or manipulative. But I've watched Apex destroy too many companies, too many lives. Phoenix is my firewall against that destruction. The weight of her confidence settled on Michael's shoulders. She was trusting him with information that could be explosive if misunderstood or misrepresented. The question was, why him? As if reading his thoughts, Olivia continued, I'm telling you this because I need allies I can trust, people who understand what's really at stake. From the moment you stopped to help a stranger on that sidewalk, you've demonstrated the values Sterling was built on: compassion, integrity, practical problem solving. Her words warmed him, but Michael remained pragmatic. I appreciate your confidence, but I'm still new here. There must be longtime employees who understand the company better. Length of service doesn't always equate to shared values, Olivia replied. Besides, you bring a perspective most of my executives lack. You know what it means to struggle to work multiple jobs, to worry about healthcare and childcare. You understand why what we do matters. Put that way, it made sense. Michael had lived the reality that Sterling's policies were designed to address. He'd experienced firsthand how access to affordable housing, quality childcare, and decent healthcare could transform a family's life. What do you need from me? He asked. For now, just awareness. Keep your eyes open. Report anything unusual directly to me. Olivia began returning the documents to the folder. And there's one more thing, something personal I'd like your help with. Of course. My doctor has ordered a series of cardiac stress tests next week. Apparently, surviving one heart attack makes them nervous about a second. She attempted a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I'd appreciate if you could accompany me. The medical jargon can be overwhelming, and I trust your judgment. The request surprised him. This wasn't a business matter, but something deeply personal, a vulnerability she was choosing to share with him. "I'd be honored," he said simply. "Rachel went through so many tests. I got pretty good at translating doctor speak." "Thank you, Michael." The gratitude in her voice was genuine. "It's been a long time since I've had someone I could rely on this way." As he left her office, Michael's mind whirled with everything he'd learned. The sabotage attempt, Phoenix, Olivia's trust in him. It was a lot to process, especially for someone who just weeks ago had been anonymously stacking boxes in a warehouse. What troubled him most was the deliberate targeting of Sterling Industries by people who saw its employee-centric model as wasteful rather than valuable. The world already had enough companies that treated workers as disposable resources. Places like Sterling, which recognized the humanity of their employees, were rare and precious. Little did he know that the greatest threat to his newfound stability wasn't Apex Capital, but a secret buried in Sterling's past, a secret directly connected to his own family's suffering. 3 days later, Michael accompanied Olivia to her cardiac tests at Memorial East Hospital, the same hospital where Rachel had received her cancer treatments, where Eleanor Sterling had volunteered, where their family's paths had first crossed years before. Walking through those familiar corridors brought a flood of memories: Rachel's courage as her body betrayed her, Lily's small hand clutching his as they visited Mommy, the crushing weight of helplessness as he watched his wife's strength fade day by day. But there were gentler memories too. Eleanor Sterling bringing books and comfort to Rachel during treatments. The compassionate nurses who explained procedures in terms they could understand. The child life specialist who helped Lily process what was happening through art and play. "Are you okay?" Olivia asked as they waited in the cardiology department. "Being back here must be difficult." "It's strange," Michael admitted. "Like walking through a dream where everything is familiar but slightly off." Rachel was in oncology, not cardiology, but the smells, the sounds, they're the same. Olivia touched his arm lightly, her fingers warm against his sleeve. "We can find another hospital if this is too much." "No, it's actually important somehow. Full circle." He managed a small smile. "Besides, this is where your mother volunteered. It feels right." The tests themselves were straightforward: EKG, echocardiogram, stress test. Michael sat nearby throughout, asking clarifying questions when medical terminology became too dense, taking notes on the doctor's recommendations. Olivia, usually so commanding in her corporate environment, seemed smaller somehow in the hospital gown, more vulnerable. Dr. Williams, the cardiologist, was cautiously optimistic. "The damage from your first episode appears to be healing well, Ms. Sterling. However, your stress levels remain concerning, and there's a family history we need to consider." "My father died of a heart attack," Olivia acknowledged, "and my mother had congestive heart failure." "Exactly, which means lifestyle modifications aren't optional for you, they're essential." Dr. Williams looked pointedly at Michael. "She needs regular exercise, a heart-healthy diet, and most importantly, stress management. Corporate empires don't run themselves, I understand, but they're not worth dying for." "I'll make sure she follows your recommendations," Michael promised, ignoring Olivia's raised eyebrow at his presumption. As they left the hospital, Olivia was uncharacteristically quiet. They walked to the parking garage where her driver waited, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the pavement. "Thank you for coming with me," she said finally. "It was easier having someone there." "That's what friends do," Michael replied, the word friends feeling both right and somehow insufficient for the complex relationship they'd developed. Olivia's smile was soft, genuine, in a way her professional smiles rarely were. "Friends, yes, I suppose we are." The moment lingered between them, charged with unspoken possibilities. Then Olivia glanced at her watch, the CEO persona sliding back into place. "I should get back to the office. The board meeting is tomorrow and I need to prepare." "Don't stay too late," Michael reminded her. "Doctor's orders." "Yes, sir." She mock saluted, then surprised him by adding, "Why don't you and Lily come for dinner this weekend? I have a house with a ridiculously large kitchen that I rarely use. It would be nice to have company." The invitation felt significant, a crossing of boundaries from professional to personal. "We'd like that," Michael said, aware of a warmth spreading through his chest that had nothing to do with the afternoon sun. As Olivia's car pulled away, Michael decided to walk back to Sterling Industries rather than calling a cab. He needed the time to think, to process the evolving complexity of his feelings for this remarkable woman who had entered his life so unexpectedly. He was so lost in thought that he almost missed the black sedan parked half a block from the hospital entrance, the same model the Apex representatives used. As he watched a familiar figure emerge from the hospital and approach the car, Richard Chen, Olivia's COO, supposedly in meetings at Sterling all afternoon. Chen spoke briefly with someone inside the vehicle, then handed over what looked like a folder before walking briskly toward the parking garage. The sedan pulled away, but not before Michael glimpsed the driver, one of the Apex executives he'd seen touring the facility before the sabotage attempt. Cold realization washed over him. Chen, Olivia's trusted second-in-command, was passing information to Apex. But what information, and why meet at the hospital of all places? Michael pulled out his phone to call Olivia, then hesitated. This was something he needed to verify before making accusations against her longtime colleague. Instead, he changed direction, heading for the hospital's administrative offices. If Chen had accessed any records, there would be a digital trail. Using his connection to Olivia and some carefully phrased questions about Eleanor Sterling's volunteer history, Michael managed to speak with the hospital's records administrator, a woman named Patricia, who remembered Eleanor fondly. Such a compassionate soul, Patricia reminisced. She specifically requested the oncology ward, said those patients needed the most encouragement. Did she ever mention a particular patient, Rachel Thompson? Michael asked the question, causing a familiar tightness in his throat. Patricia's brow furrowed. I couldn't say specifically. Patient confidentiality, you understand. But I know Eleanor formed several special bonds with families facing terminal diagnoses. The reason I ask, Michael continued carefully, is that Ms. Sterling and I are trying to piece together how our families' paths crossed. Any records from that time would be helpful. Well, I can check who accessed those records recently, Patricia offered. Sometimes that gives us clues. She turned to her computer, typing efficiently. Interesting. Someone did access Eleanor Sterling's volunteer records last month, authorized by Olivia Sterling herself. And again, today, actually. Michael's pulse quickened. Today, who accessed them today? Let's see, a Mr. Chen with authorization from the Sterling Industries legal department. So that was it. Chen was investigating the connection between the Sterlings and Thompsons. But why and what did it have to do with Apex's takeover attempt? One more question, Michael said, a hunch forming. Does your system show what other records Mr. Chen accessed today? Patricia hesitated, clearly weighing professional ethics against her desire to help Eleanor Sterling's daughter. I shouldn't really. It could be important to protecting Ms. Sterling's interests, Michael pressed. She's facing some corporate challenges right now. That seemed to decide her. Patricia typed a few more commands, then frowned at her screen. That's odd. He requested records from the hospital's property management division, specifically the sale of the East Wing land to Sterling Holdings 15 years ago. The East Wing land. Something clicked in Michael's memory, his father complaining about the factory closure, saying the company had sold out to some developer connected to the hospital. He'd been too consumed with Rachel's diagnosis to pay much attention at the time, but now... Thank you, Patricia. You've been incredibly helpful. Outside the hospital, Michael pulled out his phone again, this time not to call Olivia, but to search for news archives from 15 years ago. The results made his blood run cold. Sterling acquisitions, purchases abandoned, hospital adjacent, land for manufacturing expansion. East Side factory closures affect hundreds of workers. Community protests as Sterling Industries replaces union jobs with automated facility. The dates aligned perfectly with his father's job loss, the financial strain that had contributed to his fatal heart attack 2 years later. And there, in a photo accompanying one of the articles, was William Sterling, Olivia's father, cutting a ribbon at the new facility built where his father's factory had once stood. The revelation hit Michael like a physical blow. The Sterling family, the same family. He now worked for the same family whose matriarch had comforted his dying wife, the same family whose daughter he was developing feelings for had been directly responsible for his father's suffering. Had Olivia known all along? Was her interest in him, the job offer, the friendship, perhaps even the hint of something more born of guilt rather than genuine connection? Was he a charity case, a way for her to atone for her father's business decisions? The thought made him physically ill. And now Chen was digging into this history, presumably to use it as leverage for Apex. If they revealed that Olivia had hired the son of a worker displaced by her father's cutthroat business tactics, perhaps out of guilt or manipulation, it would undermine her credibility with the board, with employees, with the community that trusted her to be different from typical corporate executives. Michael stood outside the hospital, the weight of this revelation pressing on his chest until he could barely breathe. Everything he'd begun to build at Sterling Industries, the security for Lily, the friendship with Olivia, the sense of purpose and belonging, suddenly felt built on shifting sand. His phone buzzed with a text from Olivia. Made it back to the office. Thank you again for today. Looking forward to dinner this weekend. He stared at the message, unable to formulate a response. How could he face her now, knowing what her family had done to his? How could he maintain his growing feelings for her when they might be based on a foundation of guilt and manipulation rather than genuine connection? And yet, the Olivia Sterling he'd come to know over these past weeks didn't seem capable of such calculated deception. Her vulnerability during the medical tests, her passion for protecting Sterling employees from Apex's predatory tactics, her gentle interactions with Lily, those couldn't all be an act, could they? As the sun set over the city, casting long shadows across the hospital parking lot, Michael Thompson found himself at a crossroads. To confront Olivia with what he'd discovered would risk everything they'd built. To remain silent would mean living with doubt about her true motivations. And hovering over it all was the threat of Apex Capital poised to use this connection to drive a wedge between them at the most critical moment in Sterling Industries' history. The board meeting was tomorrow. Chen would undoubtedly share his discovery with his Apex allies before then. Time was running out for Michael to decide where his loyalties truly lay, with the memory of his father's suffering or with the future he glimpsed alongside Olivia Sterling. His phone buzzed again. Not Olivia this time, but a text from the childcare center, Lily asking when you'll be home. Should we feed her dinner here, Lily? In all this corporate intrigue and emotional turmoil, his daughter remained his true North Star. Whatever he decided, it had to be what was best for her. And right now, Sterling Industries, despite its complicated past, was providing her with opportunities and stability she'd never had before. Michael texted back, "Tell her I'll be there in 20 minutes. We'll have dinner together." As he walked toward Sterling Industries in the gathering dusk, his mind raced with possibilities and contingencies. One thing was certain, tomorrow would bring a confrontation that would determine not just his future with the company, but the nature of his relationship with Olivia Sterling. The past and present were about to collide in ways none of them could fully anticipate. And somewhere in the shadows, Apex Capital waited ready to exploit their pain for profit. The Sterling Industries boardroom exuded power and permanence. Mahogany walls rose to a coffered ceiling, and floor-to-ceiling windows offered a commanding view of the city skyline. The massive table, a single slab of burnished walnut that had been part of the company since its founding, dominated the space, its surface reflecting the morning light like still water. Michael stood in the doorway early for the emergency facilities briefing Olivia had requested before the full board meeting. The room was empty, save for the ghosts of countless corporate decisions made within these walls, decisions that he now knew had shaped his own family's fate in ways he'd never imagined. He hadn't slept. After picking up Lily from the childcare center, he'd maintained a facade of normalcy through dinner and bedtime stories. But once she was asleep, he'd spent hours researching the factory closure that had devastated his father 15 years ago. The more he discovered, the more complex the picture became. William Sterling's decision to close the aging factory had indeed eliminated hundreds of union jobs, including his father's. But the articles also revealed that Sterling had offered relocation packages, retraining programs, and early retirement options more generous than industry standards. Many workers had transitioned to the new automated facility, though at lower wages and without union protection. It wasn't a simple story of corporate villainy. It was business pragmatic, profit-driven, but not deliberately cruel. The question remained, had Olivia known who he was when she offered him the job? Was her kindness genuine or compensatory? You're early. Michael turned to find Olivia in the doorway, elegant in a navy suit, Eleanor's pearl earrings catching the light. Despite her professional appearance, he noted the shadows beneath her eyes. She hadn't slept well either. "I wanted to prepare," he replied, his voice carefully neutral. "The facilities report you requested." "Thank you." She moved to the head of the table but didn't sit, instead lingering by the windows. "Beautiful view, isn't it?" My father used to say we put the boardroom on the top floor to remind us to take the long view to see beyond quarterly profits to the horizon. Michael joined her at the window, maintaining a careful distance. From this height, the city spread below them like a living map, including, he noted with a pang, the Eastern District where his father's factory had once stood. I've always found honesty is the best policy when facing difficult conversations, he said, finally turning to face her directly. So I'll be direct. Did you know who I was when you offered me this job? Did you know my father worked at the factory your father closed? Olivia's sharp intake of breath confirmed what he'd feared. This wasn't news to her. Her eyes, usually so confident, now held a mixture of regret and apprehension. Not at first, she said quietly. When you saved me on the sidewalk, you were just a good Samaritan. It was only after I asked security to find you when they compiled your background. She faltered, then squared her shoulders. Yes, I discovered the connection before offering you the job. But Michael, it wasn't why I offered it. Then why guilt atonement? The questions came out harsher than he intended, the sleepless night eroding his usual composure. At first, perhaps there was an element of cosmic balancing, she admitted. The son of a man my father's decision had hurt saving my life felt significant. But that's not why I created the position or why I've grown to value your contribution here. Her voice strengthened with conviction. You earned this job with your character, your work ethic, your insight. The fact that our families have this complicated history is coincidental to your qualifications. Michael wanted to believe her. Everything in her expression, her tone suggested sincerity, but doubt once planted wasn't easily uprooted. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have accepted the job if I had? She countered. If I'd said, by the way, my father's business decision contributed to your father's hardship, but I'd like to offer you a position anyway. You would have seen it as charity or manipulation. She wasn't wrong. His pride would have rejected such an offer immediately. I plan to tell you, Olivia continued. Once you were established, once you could see your value to Sterling Industries was genuine. But then there was the sabotage attempt, and Phoenix and my health issues. She gestured helplessly. The moment never seemed right. Michael processed her words, trying to separate his emotional reaction from rational assessment. Before he could respond, the boardroom door opened, and Richard Chen entered, followed by two Apex Capital representatives. Chen faltered momentarily upon seeing Michael, his expression flickering with what might have been guilt before smoothing into professional blandness. Olivia, I didn't realize you had a meeting before the board convenes, Chen said, his tone carefully modulated. Mr. Thompson isn't it from facilities? Mr. Thompson is briefing me on security upgrades following the recent incident, Olivia replied smoothly, her CEO persona sliding into place like armor. To Michael, she added, we'll continue our discussion later. The unspoken plea in her eyes was impossible to miss. Whatever personal reckoning lay between them, corporate battle lines were being drawn. The Apex representatives, sharp-eyed men in expensive suits, were already assessing him with predatory interest. Of course, Ms. Sterling, Michael replied formally. I'll have the full report ready for the board. As he gathered his documents, one of the Apex men stepped forward. James Harrington, Apex Capital. You're the new facilities manager, correct? The one with the interesting background. The deliberate emphasis made it clear they knew. Chen had delivered the information about his connection to the factory closure, and they intended to weaponize it. I'm not sure what you mean by interesting, Michael replied evenly. I've worked in facilities management for most of my career. Of course, Harrington smiled thinly. Though I believe your family has a longer history with Sterling Industries, doesn't it? Going back at least 15 years? Before Michael could respond, Olivia intervened. Mr. Thompson's qualifications are well documented, Mr. Harrington. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have a board meeting to prepare for. The dismissal was clear, but as Michael left the boardroom, he felt Harrington's calculating gaze following him. Whatever game Apex was playing, he had just become a piece on their board. In his office, Michael stared at the facility's security report he'd prepared. The document detailed the sabotage attempt and recommended countermeasures, but it now felt inconsequential compared to the personal and corporate drama unfolding. His phone buzzed with a text from the childcare center, Lily not feeling well. Low fever, asking for you. Concern immediately overrode all other considerations. Lily rarely got sick, and when she did, it often hit her hard, a legacy of the stressful years during and after Rachel's illness, when her immune system had been compromised by grief and uncertainty. "I'll be right there," he texted back, gathering his things. As he hurried across the campus toward the childcare center, Michael's phone rang, Olivia's number flashing on the screen. He hesitated, then answered. "Michael, the board meeting has been moved up. Apex is making their move. They've secured enough proxy votes to force a vote on their takeover bid. I need you here." The urgency in her voice was palpable, but so was the pull of his daughter's need. "Lily's sick. I'm on my way to get her now." A pause, then Olivia's voice softened. "Of course. Family comes first. But Michael, about what we discussed earlier, I need you to know that whatever happens today, my regard for you has been genuine. Not guilt, not manipulation, just recognition of your worth." The sincerity in her voice touched something deep within him, but before he could respond properly, she continued, "I have to go. The board is waiting. Take care of Lily, and I hope we'll talk again soon." The call ended, leaving Michael with a sense of unfinished business, both personally and professionally. But Lily needed him now, and that would always be his priority. At the childcare center, he found his daughter curled on a cot in the quiet room, her usually vibrant face flushed with fever. Emma sat beside her, holding her hand with the solemn dedication of a new best friend. "Daddy!" Lily's voice was weak but relieved. "I don't feel good." "I know, sunshine." He placed a cool hand on her forehead, alarmed at the heat radiating from her skin. "We're going home right now." Emma looked up with worried eyes. "Is Lily going to be okay? We were supposed to finish our space station model today." "She'll be fine," Michael assured her. "Just needs some rest and medicine. You two can finish your project when she's feeling better." As he gathered Lily's things, the center director approached with a concerned expression. "Her fever came on suddenly, 102 last time we checked. She was fine this morning, then complained of a headache after lunch, and within an hour she was burning up." "Has anything been going around?" Michael asked, helping Lily into her jacket. "Not that we're aware of. Emma and the other children seem fine." The director hesitated. "It might be nothing, but she mentioned feeling sick after drinking her juice at lunch. Said it tasted funny." A cold prickle of alarm ran down Michael's spine. "Which juice? The kind you always serve?" "Yes, the boxed apple juice. We checked the other boxes and they seem fine. Probably just coincidence." But Michael had spent the past month learning that at Sterling Industries, there were no coincidences, only patterns not yet recognized. "Could I see one of the juice boxes, the same kind Lily had?" The director looked puzzled but led him to the kitchen, where she retrieved a juice box from the refrigerator. It was a common brand, nothing suspicious about its appearance. Michael examined it carefully, noting the lot number and manufacturing date. "Do you mind if I take this? I'd like to check something." "Of course, though, I'm sure it's as fine. We serve these every day." Michael wasn't so certain. The timing was too perfect, Lily falling ill, just as Apex made their move against Sterling, just as his own connection to the factory closure had been discovered. It could be coincidence, or it could be the most despicable pressure tactic imaginable. With Lily leaning heavily against him, he carried her out to the waiting cab he'd called. "We're going to make a quick stop at the medical center before going home, okay, sunshine? Just to make sure you're all right." Lily nodded weakly, her usual energy completely depleted. "Will Ms. Olivia come see me? She promised to show me her telescope." The innocent question twisted in Michael's chest. "Maybe when you're feeling better, sweetheart." At Memorial Ice Emergency Department, Michael's fears deepened when the triage nurse took one look at Lily and immediately moved them to an examination room. Dr. Martinez, a pediatric specialist, arrived minutes later. 102.8, she announced after checking Lily's temperature, and her heart rate is elevated. "How long has she been like this?" "It came on suddenly at school about 2 hours ago," Michael explained, then hesitated before adding, "I'm concerned she might have ingested something. Her juice apparently tasted strange." Dr. Martinez's expression sharpened. "Ingested what exactly?" "I don't know, but—" Michael lowered his voice. "I work at Sterling Industries. There's been corporate sabotage recently, and I've been involved in the investigation. The timing of Lily getting sick is concerning." To her credit, Dr. Martinez didn't dismiss his fears. Let's run toxicology along with the standard blood work. Better safe than sorry. While they waited for results, Michael called Janet Walsh, the recently retired facilities manager who had trained him. If anyone would know what to look for in the juice box, it would be her. Michael, aren't you supposed to be at the board meeting? Janet answered, surprise evident in her voice. Change of plans. Lily's sick, suddenly suspiciously sick. I need your expertise. He explained the situation, including his suspicions about tampering. Janet's response was immediate. I'll be there in 20 minutes, and Michael, don't let that juice box out of your sight. True to her word, Janet arrived at the hospital in record time, bringing with her a small kit of testing supplies. Michael left Lily sleeping under a nurse's watchful eye to meet Janet in the hospital cafeteria. Tell me exactly what happened, Janet said as she carefully examined the juice box. Michael recounted the day's events, his discovery about the factory connection, the confrontation with Olivia Apex's veiled threat, and finally Lily's sudden illness. You think they targeted your daughter to pressure you? Janet's disgust was evident. Even for corporate raiders, that's low. It sounds paranoid when I say it out loud, Michael admitted, but the timing, it's not paranoid, it's prudent. Janet had opened the juice box and was testing the liquid with a portable device. Apex plays hardball. When they went after Westridge Manufacturing last year, the CEO's dog mysteriously ingested rat poison the day before the shareholder vote. Michael's blood ran cold. You think they'd harm a child? I think they'd create a scare to keep you occupied and away from the board meeting. Janet studied the readout on her device, frowning. Interesting. There's something here not lethal, but definitely not standard apple juice. Some kind of emetic compound that would cause fever and nausea. Enough to make Lily miserable, but not enough to cause permanent harm. Relief and rage roared within Michael's chest. They made my daughter sick to keep me out of that boardroom. More likely to demonstrate what they're capable of, a warning shot. Janet's expression was grim. This is how Apex operates, Michael. They find leverage points and exploit them without mercy. I've seen it before. Seen it. I need to get back to Sterling, Michael said, already rising. If they're willing to go this far. What about Lily? Janet asked. She needs you here. Michael felt torn between his daughter's bedside and the corporate battle that now threatened not just his livelihood, but potentially Lily's safety. Before he could respond, Dr. Martinez entered the cafeteria, making a beeline for their table. Mr. Thompson, I've been looking for you. We have Lily's preliminary test results. Is she okay? The fear in his voice was raw. She'll be fine, Dr. Martinez assured him. But you were right to be concerned. We found traces of ipecac and a mild stimulant in her system, nothing life-threatening, but definitely not something that should be in a child's juice. It was deliberate, Michael said, the confirmation of his suspicions bringing no satisfaction. I've already notified hospital security and the police. Dr. Martinez continued. They'll want to speak with you, but not urgently. We've given Lily medication to counteract the effects. She's already showing improvement and asking for you. Thank you, doctor. Michael turned to Janet. I need to stay with Lily, but Olivia needs to know what's happening. The board meeting, is probably already underway, Janet finished. I still have contacts in the building. Let me make some calls, see what's happening. As Janet stepped away to use her phone, Michael's own phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your daughter will recover quickly. Consider this a demonstration of our reach. The Sterling era is ending. Your future could be secure if you're on the right side of this transition. J.H. James Harrington. The Apex representative's threat was barely veiled, the implicit message, clear support Apex's takeover, or Lily could be at risk again. A cold clarity settled over Michael. This wasn't just about corporate politics anymore. It was about protecting his daughter from people who saw her as nothing more than leverage. And protecting Lily meant ensuring that men like Harrington never gained control of Sterling Industries or its resources. When Janet returned, her expression was grave. It's worse than we thought. Chen presented evidence at the board meeting, claiming Olivia hired you as part of a cover-up of historical labor abuses. He's painting her as manipulative and unethical, using your family's connection to make the case that she's unfit to lead. That's absurd, Michael protested. If anything, she's tried to make amends for past corporate decisions. The board doesn't know that. All they see is a CEO who hired the son of a displaced worker without disclosing the connection, potentially exposing the company to liability or public relations issues. Janet lowered her voice. Apex has offered to assume any legal liabilities as part of their takeover bid, positioning themselves as the responsible adults cleaning up Olivia's mess. It's a setup, Michael realized. They're using me to discredit her, and they made Lily sick to keep me away so I couldn't defend her. Exactly. Janet glanced at her watch. The vote is scheduled for 3 p.m. That's less than 2 hours from now. Michael looked toward the pediatric ward where Lily was recovering. His daughter needed him, but so did Olivia and everyone else who depended on Sterling Industries' ethical approach to business. If Apex succeeded, it wouldn't just be his job at risk, it would be hundreds of families who relied on Sterling's employee housing childcare center and healthcare benefits. I need to be in that boardroom, he said finally, but I can't leave Lily. Janet's face softened. What if Lily came with you, doctor? Martinez said she's improving, and I'll be right there with her while you address the board. Bring my sick daughter to a corporate showdown. Michael hesitated, the idea both absurd and strangely fitting. That's not exactly standard procedure. Neither is poisoning a child to manipulate a boardroom vote, Janet countered. Sometimes you have to fight fire with fire, or in this case, truth against manipulation. After consulting with Dr. Martinez, who confirmed Lily was stable enough to be discharged, Michael made his decision. If Apex wanted to make this personal, he would show them exactly what that meant, not as a weapon, but as a reminder of the human lives affected by corporate decisions. The Sterling Industries boardroom fell silent as Michael entered, Lily held securely in his arms. Janet followed, carrying a small bag of medical supplies. The board members, 12 men and women representing major shareholders, looked up in shock at this unprecedented interruption. Olivia, standing at the head of the table mid-presentation, faltered momentarily, her eyes widening at the sight of them. Richard Chen, seated beside the Apex representatives, paled visibly. Mr. Thompson, Olivia recovered first. This is a closed board meeting. If there's an emergency, there is an emergency, Miss Sterling, Michael replied, his voice steady despite the storm of emotions beneath. One that concerns everyone in this room. He moved forward, noting how Harrington shifted uncomfortably in his seat. My daughter was poisoned today. Nothing life-threatening, just enough to make her sick and keep me away from this meeting. The hospital has confirmed it was deliberate contamination of her juice at the childcare center. Murmurs of shock rippled through the board members. Olivia's face drained of color. Michael, I'm so sorry. Is Lily? She'll be fine, he assured her, that addressed the board directly. But this incident isn't isolated. It's part of a pattern of escalating tactics designed to facilitate Apex Capital's hostile takeover of Sterling Industries. Harrington rose halfway from his seat. That's an outrageous accusation. Apex had nothing to do with. I have the text message you sent me. Michael cut him off, nodding to Janet, who held up his phone displaying the message. Threatening a child, even indirectly, crosses every line of business, ethics, and basic human decency. The board chairman, a distinguished older man named Harrison Wells, leaned forward. Mr. Thompson, these are serious allegations. What exactly are you suggesting? I'm suggesting that the narrative you've been presented today is manipulated and incomplete. Michael shifted Lily gently in his arms. She was awake, but quiet, watching the proceedings with feverish curiosity. Yes, my father worked at the factory Sterling closed 15 years ago. Yes, Miss Sterling offered me a position knowing that connection. But not as manipulation or cover-up, as recognition that corporations have ongoing responsibilities to the communities they impact. He moved closer to the table, ensuring every board member could see him clearly. Sterling Industries isn't perfect. William Sterling made business decisions that hurt families like mine. But the company also created systems to mitigate those impacts. Retraining programs, retirement options, community investments. Under Olivia Sterling's leadership, those commitments have expanded into one of the most progressive corporate models in the country. Michael gestured toward the window toward the campus spreading below. The child care center where my daughter was poisoned today, it allows parents to work without choosing between career and family. The employee housing where we live, it provides affordable homes in a city with skyrocketing rents. The health benefits that covered Lily's hospital visit today, they're among the most comprehensive in the industry. He turned to face Harrington and the Apex team directly. These aren't wasteful expenses to be cut for shareholder value. They're investments in a sustainable business model that benefits everyone, employees, community, and yes, shareholders with the vision to see beyond quarterly returns. Lily stirred in his arms, whispering something. Michael leaned down to hear her, then smiled faintly. My daughter wants me to tell you that she loves the space science program at the Child Care Center, and she's building a model of the International Space Station with her best friend Emma. The simple statement, a child's perspective amid corporate machinations, visibly affected several board members. Michael continued, his voice strengthening. Apex Capital has presented you with financial projections showing how much more profitable Sterling could be if it eliminated these unnecessary expenses. What they haven't shown you is the human cost of those cuts, families, displaced children losing educational opportunities, communities destabilized. He nodded toward Olivia. Ms. Sterling's Phoenix plan, which I understand has been characterized as self-serving, is actually a safeguard against exactly this scenario. It ensures that even if corporate ownership changes, the core commitments to employees and community remain protected. Richard Chen finally spoke, his voice strained. This is all very emotional, but business decisions can't be based on sentiment. Apex is offering a 30% premium to current share value. That's real money for shareholders. And what's the real cost? Michael countered. Not just in dollars, but in lives affected. When my wife was dying of cancer, Eleanor Sterling volunteered at her hospital, bringing books and comfort during Rachel's treatments. When I was struggling to support Lily on a warehouse salary, Olivia Sterling recognized my potential and gave me an opportunity to build a better life for my daughter. He looked directly at Chen. That's the Sterling legacy, seeing people as more than entries on a balance sheet. Is that really what you want to dismantle for a short-term stock bump? The boardroom fell silent as his words hung in the air. Michael could see the calculations happening behind each director's eyes, weighing financial gain against corporate responsibility, immediate profits against sustainable vision. Olivia stepped forward, her composure fully restored. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. I believe you've provided the board with valuable perspective. To the director, she added, you've heard Apex's offer and their characterization of my leadership. You've heard Mr. Thompson's firsthand account of what Sterling Industries means to our employees and community. The decision is yours. The board chairman cleared his throat. Given these unexpected developments, I suggest we delay the vote for 48 hours to investigate Mr. Thompson's allegations regarding Apex's tactics, particularly concerning his daughter. Harrington began to protest, but several board members were already nodding agreement. The momentum had shifted. I believe that's a prudent course, said Victoria Manning, one of the longest-serving directors. And I'd like to request that our security team collect Mr. Thompson's phone and any evidence regarding the tampering with his daughter's juice for forensic analysis. As the meeting dissolved into procedural discussions, Olivia approached Michael, her eyes fixed on Lily with concern. She should be resting, she said quietly. Let me have my driver take you both home. Thank you, Michael replied, suddenly aware of how tired Lily was becoming in his arms. But there's something you should know first, about Phoenix. Olivia glanced around to ensure they weren't overheard. What about it? It won't be necessary, not in its current form. Michael shifted Lily to a more comfortable position. The board isn't going to approve Apex's offer, not now, not after seeing firsthand what they're willing to do. You can't be certain. I've spent my life reading people, Olivia. It's a skill you develop when you're constantly negotiating with landlords, bill collectors, and hospital administrators. His voice softened. They needed to see what was really at stake. Not abstract concepts like corporate social responsibility, but actual lives like Lily's. Olivia's expression shifted from concern to something warmer, more personal. You called me Olivia. Yes, well, Michael felt a hint of color rise in his cheeks despite the gravity of the situation. It seemed appropriate given that we've moved beyond employer-employee formalities today. I'm glad, she said simply. Then after a slight hesitation, she reached out to touch Lily's forehead gently. How are you feeling, sweetheart? Better, Lily murmured, but my tummy still hurts. Are you coming for dinner this weekend? Daddy said you might. The innocent question, so disconnected from the corporate drama surrounding them, drew a genuine smile from Olivia. I'd like that very much if your daddy still wants me to come. Her eyes met Michael's, the question implicit. After everything that had happened, the revelations about the factory, the corporate manipulation, the attack on Lily, did he still want her in their lives? The invitation stands, he said quietly. We have a lot to talk about, but I'd like that too. As they left the boardroom, Michael could feel the weight of stares following them, some calculating, some curious, some frankly admiring. He had entered Sterling Industries as a charity case in many eyes. He was leaving this meeting as someone who had potentially changed the company's future with nothing but truth and personal conviction. Janet met them in the hallway, ready to help with Lily. That was something else, she whispered. I haven't seen a boardroom that stunned since William Sterling announced his retirement. Did I do the right thing? Michael asked, sudden doubt creeping in now that the adrenaline was fading. You spoke from the heart about what matters, Janet replied. In my experience, that's always the right thing. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of police interviews, medical follow-ups for Lily, and constant updates from Sterling Industries. The forensic evidence confirmed what they already knew. Lily's juice had been deliberately contaminated, and the text from Harrington's phone provided a direct link to Apex Capital's pressure tactics. By the time the rescheduled board vote occurred, Apex had withdrawn their offer, citing reputational concerns about the Sterling acquisition. 3 members of the Apex team, including Harrington, were placed on leave pending investigation. Richard Chen resigned from Sterling Industries, his role in providing confidential information to Apex now impossible to deny. Through it all, Olivia Sterling maintained a careful professional distance from Michael, communicating primarily through formal corporate channels about the investigation and its implications for Sterling Industries' security protocols. The personal connection they'd begun to forge seemed to have been temporarily set aside in the chaos of corporate crisis management. By Friday afternoon, Lily had fully recovered, insisting on returning to the childcare center to finish her space station model with Emma. Michael used the opportunity to complete his delayed facility security report, incorporating the childcare center breach and recommending comprehensive new safeguards. He was just putting the finishing touches on the document when his office phone rang, Olivia's direct line. Michael, are you still in the building? Her voice sounded different, less CEO, more the woman who had stood with him in the hospital during her cardiac tests. Just finishing up the security report, he replied. Is everything all right? Yes, actually, better than all right. There was a smile in her voice now. The board just unanimously approved a new corporate charter for Sterling Industries, one that formally incorporates employee welfare and community responsibility into our governance structure. Phoenix has essentially become our new corporate DNA. That's incredible, Michael said, genuinely impressed. Congratulations. It wouldn't have happened without you, Olivia continued. Your speech in the boardroom, bringing Lily, making it personal, it changed minds in ways my financial arguments never could. I just spoke the truth. Sometimes that's the most powerful thing. A pause, then Olivia's voice softened further. About dinner tomorrow. Is the invitation still open? I'd understand if you wanted space after everything that's happened. Michael considered the question carefully. The past week had been a whirlwind of revelations, confrontations, and corporate intrigue. He'd learned that Olivia had known about his family connection to Sterling's past, that she'd hired him partly because of that connection, and that corporate enemies were willing to harm his child to advance their agenda. But he'd also seen Olivia fight with everything she had to protect the company's soul, the programs and principles that made Sterling Industries more than just another profit machine. He'd witnessed her vulnerability during medical tests and her gentle concern for Lily, even amid boardroom chaos. The invitation stands, he said finally. Lily's been asking about your telescope. I'll bring it, Olivia promised, relief evident in her voice. And Michael, I think it's time we talked about everything, the past, the present, and whatever comes next. No more secrets. No more secrets, he agreed. 7 o'clock tomorrow. I'll be there. After hanging up, Michael sat at his desk for a long moment, contemplating the strange path that had led him here. 6 months ago, he'd been an anonymous warehouse worker, struggling to make ends meet. Still grieving Rachel, still searching for solid ground in a world that seemed determined to keep him off balance. Now he was a key player in one of the city's largest corporations, with a comfortable home, financial security for Lily, in the beginning of something. with a remarkable woman who had entered his life through the most unlikely of circumstances. Not everything was resolved. There would always be a complicated history between the Thompsons and the Sterlings. William's business decision that had hurt his father balanced against Eleanor's kindness to Rachel, now followed by Olivia's opportunity for him and safety net for Lily. The past couldn't be erased, but perhaps it could be understood, accepted, and ultimately transcended. As Michael gathered his things to pick up Lily from the childcare center, he passed the spot on the downtown sidewalk where he'd first encountered Olivia Sterling, where he'd dropped his lunchbox without hesitation to help a stranger in distress. He paused there, remembering the moment that had changed everything. It had been a simple choice to help or to walk past, but in that choice lay all the difference. Just as the board had faced a choice between profit and people, just as Olivia had chosen to confront her family's complex legacy rather than bury it, just as he had chosen to see beyond his own hurt to the larger principles at stake. Tomorrow night, he and Olivia would have a dinner. They would talk honestly about the past, acknowledge the complicated threads that had brought them together, and decide whether there was a future worth building, not just professionally, but personally. Lily would be there too, her resilient spirit a reminder of what truly mattered beyond corporate politics and historical grievances. And perhaps if the skies were clear, they would use Olivia's telescope to look at the stars, those ancient points of light that had witnessed countless human stories of loss and renewal, conflict and reconciliation, endings and beginnings. For now, that was enough, the promise of honest conversation, the possibility of connection, and the knowledge that whatever happened, he had stood up for what mattered most. Not just for himself and Lily, but for all the families that depended on Sterling Industries' progressive vision. As he walked toward the childcare center where his daughter waited, Michael Thompson felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Not just hope, but certainty. Whatever came next, they would face it together with clear eyes, open hearts, and the courage to build something better than what had come before. Saturday evening arrived with perfect clarity, the kind of crisp autumn night that seemed designed for stargazing. Michael had spent the afternoon preparing not just the meal, a simple but hearty lasagna, Lily's favorite, but also the conversation he knew would define whatever came next between him and Olivia. Lily had been buzzing with excitement since morning, arranging and rearranging her space books, changing outfits 3 times and repeatedly asking what time it was. Her enthusiasm was both endearing and slightly anxiety-inducing as Michael tried to manage her expectations along with his own. "Is Ms. Olivia your girlfriend?" she had asked while helping set the table. The question dropped with the casual bombshell timing that only children could master. "It's complicated, sweetheart," Michael had replied, carefully placing water glasses beside their everyday plates. "We're friends who are still getting to know each other better. Emma says her mom says you look at Ms. Olivia the way princes look at princesses in movies," Lily continued undeterred. "And Ms. Olivia looks at you the same way." Michael had nearly dropped a fork. "Emma's mom said that." "Uh-huh. She told Emma's dad that you and Ms. Olivia are the best office romance since Janet and Frank in accounting." Lily's perfect mimicry of an adult gossip tone was both alarming and hilarious. "Well, Michael had managed. I think Emma's mom might be getting ahead of things a bit, and maybe we should talk about private conversations and what's appropriate to repeat." Now, as 7 o'clock approached, Michael found himself more nervous than he'd expected. This wasn't just dinner with a colleague or even a casual date. Tonight would determine whether the connection forming between them could withstand the weight of their complicated shared history. The doorbell rang precisely at 7. Olivia Sterling stood in the hallway looking both familiar and somehow new. She wore simple dark jeans and a soft blue sweater that made her eyes seem more vivid. Her silver-streaked hair loose around her shoulders rather than in its usual corporate style. Most striking was the absence of her usual professional armor. No tailored suit, no formal accessories, save for Eleanor's pearl earrings. In one arm, she cradled a telescope case. In the other, she held a bottle of wine and a gift bag decorated with stars and planets. "Right on time," Michael said, stepping back to welcome her. "Punctuality is my one consistent virtue," Olivia replied with a self-deprecating smile. "Though I'll admit I've been ready since 5 and drove around the block twice to avoid being embarrassingly early." The confession, so human, so unlike her CEO persona, immediately eased some of the tension Michael had been carrying. This wasn't Sterling Industries' formidable leader standing at his door. This was just Olivia, as nervous and hopeful about the evening as he was. Ms. Olivia, Lily came racing from her room, skidding to a stop in her socked feet. You brought your telescope. Can we see Saturn? Emma says Saturn has rings, but I've never seen them. We absolutely can, Olivia replied, kneeling to Lily's level despite her obviously expensive jeans. Saturn is perfectly positioned for viewing tonight, and I brought something else for our resident astronomer. She handed Lily the colorfully wrapped gift bag. Lily's eyes widened as she extracted a beautiful illustrated book on constellations and a small brass compass with her name engraved on the lid. It's beautiful, thank you. She threw her arms around Olivia's neck in an impulsive hug that momentarily startled the older woman before she returned the embrace. The sight of them together, his vibrant daughter and this complex, remarkable woman, created a tightness in Michael's chest that wasn't entirely uncomfortable. Whatever uncertainties lay between him and Olivia, her genuine connection with Lily was undeniable. Dinner progressed with surprising ease. Lily dominated the early conversation with questions about stars, planets, and whether Olivia thought aliens might visit Earth someday. Olivia answered each query thoughtfully, neither condescending to Lily's age nor overcomplicating her explanations. My father was an amateur astronomer, she explained as they enjoyed the lasagna Michael had prepared. He had a telescope much like the one I brought tonight. On clear nights, he'd set it up on our balcony and show me the constellations, the planets, even distant galaxies. It was our special time together. Like me and Daddy have puzzle time, Lily observed. Every Sunday we do a puzzle together and listen to Mommy's favorite music. That sounds wonderful, Olivia said softly. Traditions like that are so important. Mommy said traditions are like hugs that last forever. Lily continued, unaware of the emotional impact her words had on both adults. Even when people are gone, the traditions still hug you. Michael felt his throat tighten. Rachel had indeed said that during her final months when she'd been so focused on creating memories and traditions that would outlast her presence. That Lily remembered not just the tradition, but the wisdom behind it was a testament to Rachel's foresight and their daughter's remarkable spirit. Your mommy was very wise, Olivia said, reaching briefly to touch Lily's hand. My mother used to say something similar about the volunteer work she did, that kindness creates connections that last beyond our time with each other. The parallel wasn't lost on Michael. Both women had understood the importance of leaving a legacy of love rather than just material possessions. It was a value he shared, one that drew him to Olivia, despite their complicated history. After dinner, as twilight deepened into true night, they moved to the small balcony of the apartment. Michael had prepared it earlier, arranging 3 comfortable chairs and a small table for hot chocolate. Olivia set up her telescope with practiced efficiency while Lily watched with rapt attention. This is a refracting telescope, Olivia explained as she worked. It uses lenses rather than mirrors to gather and focus light. It's actually very similar to the one Galileo used to discover Jupiter's moons over 400 years ago. Wow, Lily breathed, clearly impressed by the historical connection. So we're doing the same thing Galileo did. Exactly. Looking up with wonder and curiosity, that's the heart of all science. Olivia finished the setup and stepped back. Now let's find Saturn for you. The moment Lily first saw Saturn's rings through the telescope was magical. Her gasp of pure delight, the way her eyes widened in astonishment, her breathless, "It's real," as if she'd half expected the planet to be an invention of her books and teachers. "It's beautiful," she whispered, still peering through the eyepiece. "Daddy, you have to see." Michael took his turn at the telescope, the ringed planet sharp and clear against the black velvet of space. "Incredible," he agreed. "Thank you for sharing this with us, Olivia." They spent the next hour exploring the night sky, the cratered surface of the moon, the red glow of Mars' distant star clusters that had been ancient when dinosaurs walked the earth. Lily absorbed every detail, asking insightful questions that occasionally surprised even Olivia with their perception. Eventually, the combination of lingering illness, excitement, and the late hour caught up with Lily. Her enthusiastic questions gave way to yawns, and Michael noticed her eyelids growing heavy. "I think it's bedtime for aspiring astronomers," he said gently. "But we haven't seen everything yet," Lily protested weakly, another yawn undermining her argument. "The universe will still be there tomorrow night," Olivia assured her. And you know what, I could leave the telescope here for a few days if your daddy doesn't mind. That way you can continue your observations. Lily's face lit up despite her fatigue. Really, could we, Daddy? If Ms. Olivia is sure she doesn't need it, Michael replied, touched by the thoughtful offer. I have another at home, Olivia said with a smile. This one was my father's, actually. I think he would be pleased to know it's being used by such an enthusiastic young scientist. After Lily's bedtime routine, teeth-brushing pajamas, and a chapter from her current book, Olivia surprised them both by asking if she could tuck Lily in. I've never actually tucked a child into bed before, she admitted, when Lily had drifted off to sleep. It's quite something, isn't it, that trusts that innocence? They returned to the living room where Michael poured the wine Olivia had brought. A comfortable silence settled between them as they sat on the small couch close, but not touching each gathering thoughts for the conversation they'd promised to have. No more secrets, Michael said, finally echoing their agreement from the phone call. So I'll start with a question I've been wondering about since the board meeting. Did you know that Apex would target Lily? Was that why you warned me to watch for unusual activities? Olivia shook her head firmly. Never. I knew they played dirty, but I never imagined they'd harm a child. If I had suspected even the possibility, I would have assigned security to both of you immediately. Her eyes darkened with remembered anger. What they did was criminal, not just unethical. The police investigation will ensure they face consequences. I believe you, Michael said, and realized he truly did. Whatever complexities existed in their relationship, he was certain Olivia would never knowingly put Lily at risk. My turn for a question, Olivia said after taking a sip of wine. After learning everything about your father's factory, about my initial motivations for hiring you, do you regret accepting the position? Do you regret knowing me? The vulnerability in her question touched him deeply. Here was one of the most powerful women in the business world genuinely concerned that her actions might have caused him pain. Not for a moment, Michael answered honestly. Was I hurt when I first discovered the connection? Yes. Did I question your motives? Absolutely. But Olivia, look at what's come from that complicated beginning. Lily has opportunities I could never have provided on my own. Sterling Industries has strengthened its commitment to ethical business practices. And you and I, he paused, searching for the right words. We found something neither of us expected. Olivia's eyes met his, a question in their depths. And what is that exactly? Understanding. Connection. Michael set down his wine glass, choosing his words carefully. When Rachel died, I thought that part of my life was over. The part where someone really sees you, challenges you, makes you want to be better. I was focused solely on survival, on giving Lily stability. I wasn't looking for whatever this is between us. Neither was I, Olivia admitted. After my heart attack, I was focused on securing Sterling's future, on honoring my parents' legacy. A personal connection wasn't on my agenda. A small smile touched her lips. But then you dropped your lunchbox on a sidewalk to save a stranger's life, and somehow everything changed. The memory of their first meeting hung between them, that moment of pure instinct, when Michael had acted without calculation or expectation of reward. It had been the most natural thing in the world to help someone in distress, yet that simple choice had altered the trajectory of both their lives. Where do we go from here? Michael asked, the question encompassing both their personal relationship and their professional connection at Sterling Industries. Olivia considered this thoughtfully. Professionally, the board has approved my recommendation to promote you to Director of Operations, overseeing not just facilities, but all of Sterling's community programs. The salary would be commensurate with the increased responsibility, of course. That's unexpected, Michael said, genuinely surprised. I'm not sure I'm qualified. Your actions this week proved otherwise. You understand what Sterling stands for better than executives who've been with us for decades. Olivia's expression was earnest. You see the connection between corporate policy and human impact. That's exactly the perspective we need in leadership. The offer was tempting, not just for the financial security it would provide for Lily, but for the opportunity to help shape Sterling's future in a meaningful way. Yet Michael hesitated, aware that accepting would further complicate their personal relationship. And what about us, he asked finally. Would my promotion make any possibility of a personal relationship inappropriate? Olivia's smile deepened. The board actually addressed that too, though more indirectly. The new corporate charter includes updated policies on workplace relationships. As long as any relationship is disclosed and proper protocols for professional interactions are followed, there are no prohibitions. You discussed this with the board. Michael was both impressed and slightly embarrassed at the thought. Not specifically about us, Olivia clarified, but about creating a corporate culture that recognizes employees as whole people with lives and relationships outside their job titles. The old policies were outdated and unnecessarily restrictive. Michael absorbed this information, appreciating the thoughtfulness behind it. So, professionally, there's a clear path forward. And personally, Olivia said, her voice softening, I'd like to see where this goes. Slowly, mindfully, with complete awareness of the complexities involved. She glanced toward Lily's bedroom. Your daughter will always come first, that's as it should be, and Sterling will demand much of both our attention. But perhaps within those parameters, we could explore what's developing between us. The careful, measured approach was so characteristically Olivia's strategic, thoughtful, aware of potential complications, but willing to move forward despite them. It was one of the qualities Michael had come to admire most about her. I'd like that too, he said simply. As if by mutual agreement, they moved no further that night, no dramatic gestures, no impulsive decisions. Instead, they returned to the balcony with fresh glasses of wine and continued their exploration of the night sky, pointing out constellations and sharing stories of their respective childhoods. When Olivia finally prepared to leave around midnight, there was a comfortable ease between them, the foundation of something genuine built on shared values and mutual respect rather than mere attraction or circumstance. Thank you for dinner, she said at the door, and for the conversation, for everything, really. Thank you for the stars, Michael replied. Lily will remember this night forever. So will I. Olivia hesitated, then leaned forward to place a gentle kiss on his cheek, a gesture both restrained and full of promise. Good night, Michael. Good night, Olivia. After she left, Michael stood for a moment in the quiet apartment, listening to Lily's soft breathing from her bedroom and feeling the lingering warmth of Olivia's presence. On the balcony, her father's telescope stood silhouetted against the night sky, a bridge between past and future, between loss and new beginnings. The 6 months that followed transformed Sterling Industries in ways few could have predicted. The Apex takeover attempt, rather than weakening the company, had ultimately strengthened it, uniting the board behind Olivia's vision and solidifying Sterling's commitment to its progressive business model. The new corporate charter formally incorporated employee welfare and community responsibility into the governance structure, making what had once been William Sterling's personal philosophy an institutional mandate. Shareholders who might have been tempted by Apex's premium offer now saw the long-term value in Sterling's approach, especially as quarterly results showed increasing profitability alongside expanded community investments. For Michael, the professional changes were equally dramatic. As the newly appointed director of operations, he now oversaw not just facilities management, but all of Sterling's community initiatives, from employee housing to educational programs to environmental sustainability projects. The role challenged him daily, drawing on both his practical problem-solving skills and his growing understanding of corporate strategy. His relationship with Olivia developed with the same careful deliberation that characterized both their approaches to life. Weekly dinners expanded to include museum visits, concerts in the park, and weekend astronomical observations with Lily. They maintained strict professionalism during business hours, while gradually allowing their personal connection to deepen during private moments. It wasn't always smooth sailing. The transition from facilities manager to director brought new responsibilities and expectations that sometimes stretched Michael's confidence. Olivia's workaholic tendencies occasionally conflicted with his priority on family time, and there were always the whispers employees who assumed his rapid promotion came from personal connection, rather than merit board members who watched their interactions with calculating interest. But the foundation they'd built proved surprisingly resilient. Their shared values, compassion, integrity, responsibility to others, created common ground that transcended their different backgrounds and life experiences. The complicated history between their families, rather than dividing them, had become a source of mutual understanding about how past actions rippled into present realities. Most importantly, Lily thrived. The bright, resilient child who had weathered her mother's death now blossomed in an environment rich with opportunities and stable adult relationships. Her friendship with Evan deepened her interest in astronomy, grew into a passion for all sciences, and her natural empathy expanded to include awareness of community needs beyond her own experience. It was Lily who inadvertently prompted the next significant turn in their journey during a routine Sunday morning puzzle session, 6 months after the Apex confrontation. "Daddy," she asked, carefully fitting a puzzle piece into place, "why don't we live closer to Sterling? Emma's family just moved into the new employee houses and they can walk to school and the childcare center in 5 minutes." Michael glanced up from his coffee. "Our apartment is comfortable," Evan did, "and we're only a short bus ride away." "I know," Lily acknowledged, "but Emma says there are bigger houses being built now, with gardens and everything. And she says Ms. Olivia comes to dinner at our house so much she's practically family anyway." The innocent observation caught Michael off guard. It was true that Olivia had become a regular presence in their lives' dinner at least once a week, impromptu stargazing sessions on clear nights, quiet conversations after Lily went to bed. They had established a rhythm that felt increasingly natural, a careful dance of growing intimacy balanced against professional boundaries. "Ms. Olivia is very important to us," Michael agreed carefully, "but moving is a big decision. We'd need to think about it carefully." "I already did," Lily announced with the confidence of an 8-year-old who believed thinking about something and solving it were the same thing. "I made a list of reasons." She pulled a folded paper from her pocket and handed it to her father. Written in Lily's careful handwriting under the title, "Reasons to Move Closer to Sterling," was a numbered list. 1. No more bus rides in the rain. Can walk to school with Emma every day. Closer to the library and science center. Miss Olivia could come over more easily. Daddy wouldn't look so tired from commuting 6. We could have a real Christmas tree, no size limits like our apartment 7. Maybe a small garden for growing tomatoes like Mommy liked. The simple list, so carefully considered from a child's perspective, touched Michael deeply. Each item reflected Lily's awareness of their daily challenges and hopes for improvement, practical concerns mixed with emotional needs in the uniquely straightforward way children approach life. That evening, when Olivia came for their now traditional Sunday dinner, Michael shared Lily's list over dessert after his daughter had gone to bed. "She's been thinking about this for a while," he explained, watching Olivia's face as she read the carefully printed reasons. The new family housing units caught her attention. Olivia looked up, her expression thoughtful. "She makes a compelling case. The North Campus development does include some larger units with small gardens. As director of operations, you'd certainly qualify for priority consideration." "It would make practical sense," Michael acknowledged. "The commute is becoming more challenging as my responsibilities expand, and Lily would benefit from the proximity to school and activities." What remained unspoken was the deeper implication of such a move, not just a practical relocation, but a further integration of their lives with Sterling Industries, and by extension, with Olivia herself. Item 4 on Lily's list, Miss Olivia could come over more easily, hung between them, the innocent observation carrying weightier adult considerations. "There's something else we should discuss," Olivia said, finally setting down Lily's list with careful attention. "Something I've been considering for several weeks now." The serious tone caught Michael's attention. "Is everything all right?" "More than all right." Olivia met his gaze directly. "The board has approved my proposal for the Eleanor Sterling Memorial Hospital Wing, a state-of-the-art oncology treatment center to be built on the East Side property." "That's wonderful," Michael said sincerely. "A fitting tribute to your mother's volunteer work." "There's more to it," Olivia continued. "The specific location chosen is significant. It's the site where your father's factory once stood." The revelation hung in the air between them. Michael felt a complex wave of emotions, surprise, a hint of old pain, but also a sense of completion, of circles closing. "The factory site," he repeated. "That's powerful symbolism." "It's intentional," Olivia confirmed. "Not just symbolism, but substance. The new center will prioritize hiring from the East Side community, especially families impacted by the original factory closure. It includes a memorial acknowledging both the workers who lost livelihoods and patients like Rachel who fought their illnesses with such courage." Michael was momentarily speechless, struck by the thoughtfulness behind the initiative. This wasn't corporate image polishing or simple charity, it was meaningful repair, acknowledging historical impacts while creating new opportunities for healing on multiple levels. The past can't be erased, Olivia continued softly. My father's decision to close that factory had real consequences for real people, including your family. But perhaps we can transform that legacy into something that honors both the losses and the resilience that followed. Rachel would have loved this, Michael said finally, his voice rough with emotion. She always believed in making meaning from difficult experiences, that even the hardest journeys could yield something valuable if approached with the right spirit. She sounds remarkable, Olivia replied. I wish I could have known her. In some ways you do know her, Michael said thoughtfully. Through Lily, through the stories I've shared, and now through the center that will help families facing what we faced. The moment felt significant, not just professionally, as colleagues collaborating on an important project, but personally as two people acknowledging the complex threads that had brought them together and the possibility of weaving something new from those threads. About Lily's housing suggestion, Olivia said after a moment, would you be open to looking at the available units, no pressure, just exploration? The careful phrasing made Michael smile. It was so characteristic of their relationship, thoughtful, measured, respectful of boundaries while still moving forward. I think exploration is exactly the right approach for the housing and for other aspects of our lives. Olivia's answering smile held both relief and anticipation. I've always believed the best decisions come from thorough investigation of possibilities. Very corporate of you, Michael teased gently. Perhaps, she acknowledged with the hint of self-deprecation, though I'm learning there are some areas where analysis has its limits, where eventually you simply have to trust your heart. The admission, so unlike the data-driven CEO persona she presented to the world, touched Michael deeply. Their journey from that sidewalk encounter to this moment had been marked by gradual revelations of the person behind the professional facade, each layer revealed, strengthening rather than diminishing his admiration. To exploration then, he said, raising his water glass in a small toast, of housing options, hospital projects, and hearts. To exploration, Olivia echoed, her eyes holding his with warmth and promise. Outside the apartment windows, the city lights twinkled against the night sky, competing with the stars that had become such a significant part of their shared experience. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, the hospital project to launch housing decisions, to consider professional boundaries to navigate alongside deepening personal connection. But tonight, in the quiet aftermath of Sunday dinner, with Lily's innocent list as catalyst, Michael Thompson and Olivia Sterling had taken another step on their unexpected journey together, a journey that had begun with a simple act of compassion on a busy sidewalk and now expanded into possibilities neither could have imagined a year before. The story that had started with a heartbeat stopped and restarted continued to unfold not just as individual narratives but as something shared, a testimony to resilience, to second chances, to the healing that becomes possible when people choose connection over division, hope over cynicism, and love over fear. As Olivia prepared to leave later that evening, she paused by the telescope still set up on the balcony, her father's legacy now becoming part of their shared traditions. William used to say that stargazing teaches us perspective, that our human concerns seem smaller when viewed against the vastness of the universe. Does it work? Michael asked, joining her by the instrument that had become such a meaningful bridge between them. Sometimes, she admitted, though lately I find myself thinking that the vastness makes our connections even more precious, that finding each other across all that space and time is the real miracle. The observation, philosophical, vulnerable, genuine, crystallized for Michael exactly why this remarkable woman had become so essential to his world. In a universe of infinite possibilities, they had somehow found each other at exactly the moment both needed what the other could offer: compassion, understanding, the chance to build something meaningful together. Tomorrow's exploration could wait. Tonight, under the same stars that had witnessed their first shared evening, Michael Thompson made a silent promise to honor the past without being bound by it, to embrace the present with gratitude, and to approach the future with the courage to love again differently, but no less deeply than before. It wasn't a perfect ending, a life offered few of those, but it was a perfect moment of transition, of possibility, embraced and future welcomed. For tonight, for now, that was everything.